He crossed over into this realm, where humanity remained in a rudimentary state, and the notion of regular baths has not been created yet. Females, exclusively partnered with the most formidable to produce robust infants, and he rapidly transformed into the sovereign of the ancestral clan. At this moment, every female individual desired to bring forth his offspring. Time swiftly elapsed in the hamlet. During a night of a complete moon, as he ventured out to pursue game, he noticed an object suspended from one of his snares. Thus, he proceeded to investigate. However, due to the absence of sound, it did not appear to be a ferocious creature. He swiftly approached to investigate what it was with his keen hatchet, and he was astonished by what he beheld. It was his companion who had succumbed to his scheme. She was in quite an intriguing position. His eyes sparkled with sheer richness. The young woman began to grow enraged, and inquired whether he intended to merely observe rather than assist. However, he remarked that this was an uncommon spectacle, while the girl shouted that she was going to confront him physically. The gentleman, conversely, inquired whether she intended to strike him with that petite foot, and to playfully provoke her, he exhaled onto her foot. He began to knead it gently. The elf flushed a vivid crimson and emitted some peculiar sounds. You should cease toying with danger. Ultimately, her frustration intensified when her community began to draw nearer. He resolved to liberate her prior to their discovering her suspended there with her limbs apart. However, the existence of this monarch was not consistently straightforward. Prior to this, the females of the tribe desired to conceive his offspring. He was pursued by the individuals. Let us return to the outset to comprehend this more thoroughly. In reality, he arose in an unfamiliar location. While seizing liquid to cleanse his visage, he pondered how he found himself in such a location. After all, merely yesterday, he was in the metropolis engaging in shopping as usual. Abruptly, he perceived a voice, uttering words. Individuals were approaching him, conversing oddly, and he speculated they might be costume enthusiasts. He swiftly inquired about the means to escape from that place. However, the child hurled a stick at him. That skimmed directly alongside his ear. He didn't perish by a millimeter. And there are still individuals who claim that 7 centimeters is insignificant. He promptly began sprinting, while the savages shouted after him. In his mind, they would never apprehend him, as he had previously been a sprinter. Nevertheless, a different type of lance sliced through the side of his abdomen. Abruptly, the system engages, indicating that he must endure. He must endure for 12 hours to acquire a single attribute point and 1 survival kit. However, he was already under the hairy individual's gaze. He hurled the bone with every ounce of his power. The main character sprinted with all his might. However, it was past the point of no return. He was struck directly in the throat and swiftly succumbed to unconsciousness. Upon awakening, he found himself already in their settlement. However, for enduring, he reaped the benefits. Thus, he allocated the single point he received into power and unsealed the emergency kit. Consequently, he acquired the ability to communicate in every language and obtained a manual for survival. He additionally enabled the map and was able to observe and designate locations he had previously visited. And he even acquired an axe capable of cleaving mountains. He also discovered insights about the rainforest, in addition to acquiring fundamental medical knowledge. As he gazed at the rudimentary forms, he was able to comprehend the individual asserting that he was the most formidable, while the woman expressed her desire to conceive his offspring. Child support likely had not been established at that time. The main character deduced that this likely resembled a civilization-themed game that remains in its preliminary phase. Thus, there is a strong likelihood that he will attain the presidency, or perhaps even a deity in this territory. He instructs the system to allocate the attribute point to strength and don the fractured mountain axe. As it engages, energy courses through him and Chen effortlessly breaks the tether restraining him. However, he is swiftly observed by 2 rudimentary individuals, Stonebone and Lengu Chui. Stonebone instructs the others to prevent Chen from fleeing. Subsequently, he and Lengu Chui advance and caution him that there is no escape route. Brimming with confidence, Chen retorts, inquiring how they have the audacity to show disrespect to their deity. Stonebone gazes at him and inquires which deity he is referencing. Upon encountering Lengu Chui, Chen presumes he is the chief. He proclaims that the heavens have appointed him to govern them, and, as they have wronged him, Retribution is imminent. This immediately infuriates Stonebone, prompting him to dash directly toward Chen. Very well, the system assigns Chen a fresh task. Deter the rudimentary inhabitants and dominate them to assume the role of their chief. If he falters, he forfeits the divided mountain axe. Observing this, Chen becomes anxious as, devoid of the axe, he doubts he would endure for an extended period in an environment such as this. Determined not to be defeated, Chen confronts Stonebone's assault directly. The force is so powerful that it fractures the earth surrounding them. Chen is astonished by the sheer strength of these rudimentary individuals. Nevertheless, he recognizes that his own physique has been fortified as well. Thus, Chen retaliates with all his might, and to his astonishment, Stonebone's armament is severed in two. The whole encampment is astonished by the exhibition. Suddenly, Chen perceives that something is awfully amiss. He possesses an ominous intuition, and he's accurate. Stonebone shouts for everyone to charge at Chen simultaneously. Utterly astonished, Chen pivots and bolts away, pondering why Stonebone behaved as if it were a contest of combat, merely for the entire assembly to unite against a single 24-year-old. As a young lad charges towards him, Chen deftly sidesteps and retaliates in a seamless motion. Irate, Chen cautions them against provoking him excessively, asserting that he could still eliminate 5 of them before succumbing, and commanding them to retreat. He realizes that if all those savages descend upon him, he will be deceased within moments. To his astonishment, every savage abruptly becomes frantic and flees from him. Chen is completely unaware of the reason. Subsequently, this system uncovers a side quest, assisting the indigenous populace by repelling a fierce saber-toothed predator. It has been automatically accepted. Initially, Chen merely gazes at the task in bewilderment, but that vanishes the instant he comprehends a saber-toothed cat is positioned directly behind him. The moment Chen glimpses it, he sprints for his survival. The tiger chases him persistently, clawing at him as he escapes. In a state of alarm, Chen contemplates why everything in this place appears intent on devouring him. He also struggles to comprehend why the system would allocate such a task. He understands that a single nip from that feline could sever half of his form. Suddenly, he senses its talons scrape against him, departing and causing him significant injury. Chen understands that engaging in a straightforward confrontation is illogical. Therefore, he compels himself to relax and reflect. He then notices smoke rising from the blaze and recalls that saber-toothed tigers, similar to most creatures, are afraid of fire. Chen chooses to leverage that to his benefit. He begins devising an escape strategy, even issuing a dare to the tiger to confront him directly. As it strikes, Chen attempts to descend and avoid. To his dismay, the creature utilizes his form as a launching pad and propels itself away from him. Disturbed, Chen resumes his flight, concluding that films have deceived him. With no alternatives remaining, he sprints towards the campfire, utilizing foliage and adjacent concealment to reach it safely. By evading and concealing himself, Chen ultimately approaches the flames. He seizes a flaming branch and brandishes it at the tiger, attempting to frighten it away. To his satisfaction, the creature is genuinely frightened by the fire. Chen beckons it to engage in battle, yet inwardly he's hoping it merely withdraws. Then, he perceives an unusual noise and apprehensions, pondering whether an even more formidable beast is approaching. As the growl of another creature reverberates, the saber-toothed cat tenses in terror and flees. Observing its escape, Chen ponders what could have frightened it so intensely. And if it is dashing away, what ought to? What does he proceed to do next? Subsequently, the system proclaims that the task has been accomplished and grants him 2 attribute points as a reward. Upon hearing the noises once more, Chen determines that his security takes precedence and evacuates the vicinity. He instructs the system to increase strength by 1 point and agility by 1. With his velocity enhanced, he dashes back towards the indigenous individuals. Chen can instantly sense how much swifter and more buoyant he has become. Upon witnessing him alive, Stonebone is astonished and inquires how the saber-toothed cat refrained from consuming him. Chen merely grins and claims the creature was nothing more than a feline to him. He struck it so fiercely that it fled in terror. Subsequently, Chen smiles broadly, aspiring for the rudimentary communities to ultimately respect him. Subsequently, Chen receives a different task: assist them in constructing dwellings, establish a community, and increase the population to 50 within 18 days. He tallies the assembly and discovers there are merely 15 individuals in total, including the youngsters. To attain 50, Chen determines that he must incorporate additional tribes into theirs. That evening, all the others drift off to slumber, yet Chen is unable to. He is famished, therefore. He resolves to search for sustenance on his own. He observes that the primitives are audacious enough to slumber without assigning any watchman whatsoever. Nonetheless, his abdomen rumbles once more, and nourishment becomes paramount. He recalls the succulent lamb that was roasted previously, but falters, apprehensive. If anything could instill fear in a saber-toothed tiger, then something genuinely horrifying must be in close proximity. Chen attempts to calm himself. He must locate sustenance at all costs, and ideally, he will avoid encountering that creature. Thus, with axe in grip, he strides towards the location where he previously beheld the roasted lamb. After some time, Chen meticulously approaches the vicinity. He advances with caution, vigilant for any peril. As he approaches, he observes additional prey creatures in proximity as well. Now that he has assumed the role of leader, Chen understands he must consider more than just his own interests. Thus, he collects the additional quarry too. However, during the return journey, an uncanny sensation overwhelms him, and abruptly he plunges into a chasm. Enraged, Chen yells about who excavated a pit in that location. Then he examines it more intently, and discerns that it isn't a void at all. It's an enormous imprint, created by some creature or colossal beast, something resembling a dinosaur. Then Chen ponders that upon witnessing the saber-toothed tiger, he truly ought to have realized this location is not merely rudimentary, but an entire epoch brimming with the most horrifying and lethal beings in history. Aware that he cannot afford to squander any time, Chen resolves to swiftly locate a secure refuge for all. The following morning, the early humans are battling over sustenance. Exasperated, Chen shouts at them to cease grappling with one another. He becomes aware that they remain ignorant of humility and resource conservation, and there is much he must instruct them on. Chen declares that the present provisions will initially be allocated to the hunters who accompanied him that day. Stonebone highlights that they typically take turns while hunting, and the group from yesterday consisted of him, Agen, and Huangshu. Today he announces that it's Lu Ting, Heizhou Jiao, and Lengu Chui's opportunity. Stonebone states that everyone wishes to attend if their monarch is participating. The rest concur, but Chen observes the lad Sam, the identical individual who had assaulted him earlier. Chen deduces. Sam may be apprehensive that he is still harboring resentment, so he resolves to discover a method to lift his spirits. Chen informs everyone that anyone interested is welcome to accompany him. He is embarking on a quest to locate a site for establishing their residence. Upon hearing that, a girl named Mia advances and inquires about the meaning of a home. Chen clarified that a residence was where they cohabited as a unified clan, a space that, akin to the roots of a tree, would nourish and safeguard both this family and the descendants to come. Mia, illuminated, dashed over and embraced Chen, inquiring if she could reside with her monarch. Chen beamed and affirmed her. Before long, they would all be a united family, cohabiting together. Mia became so thrilled that she impulsively revealed that the monarch wished to reside with her and have offspring. Stonebone then inquired of Chen where this abode would be established. Chen summoned everyone and clarified that they needed to discover accessible terrain, with mountains rising to the north and rivers flowing to the south, a location abundant in water for consumption and irrigation, pastures and forage for livestock, as well as firewood and stone for construction. It would additionally offer enhanced security, with seeds and timber in proximity for agriculture and shelter. Subsequently, Chen determined that the community ought to be situated near the ocean as well, because a river delta would provide fertile soil and, subsequently, an excellent location for acquiring maritime skills. Sam voiced his thoughts, mentioning he was familiar with a location quite similar. Delighted, Chen inquired whether Sam could lead them to that location. Sam mentioned it wasn't a great distance, but cautioned against proceeding. There was a group of cattle present, and they posed a threat. That merely baffled Chen. Why dread cattle when they represented an abundance of meat and valuable materials? Thus he resolved that the flock would transform into their quarry and informed everyone to get ready. They were journeying eastward towards their future residence. The setting transitioned to the location where Sam had guided them. Sam assured Chen that the path was secure, allowing them to proceed without worry. Chen urged them not to squander time and expressed that they need not be afraid of the saber-toothed tiger. It had already been repelled, and should it return, he would safeguard them. Sam clarified that upon reaching the summit, they would be able to observe the location where the cattle congregated. At the peak, Sam anxiously urged everyone to conceal themselves. The cattle were situated beneath. Chen promptly speculated whether another beast was close by as well. Then he detected the aroma of the ocean and requested his system to launch the chart. What he observed delighted him. The region appeared ideal for constructing a metropolis. Suddenly, Sam pulled him back into stillness, cautioning that the flock might detect them. After a moment, Chen consulted his guide and identified 3 flora and 2 fauna in the vicinity ahead. The vegetation comprised verdant sunflower grass, dragon vine, and large sabaki, whereas the creatures were gray tree squirrels and pinching wasps. As there was still no update regarding the cattle group, Chen inquired of Sam the precise location of their whereabouts. Sam mentioned that the group remained in a confined woodland near the river curve, then proposed to guide them nearer. 30 minutes later, they arrived at the woods, where Sam cautioned that another move could notify the cattle. Chen perceived the quietness as peculiar, and struggled to comprehend why Sam was so distressed about the cattle. Subsequently, his examination abruptly altered, and he became rigid, believing colossal creatures lurked in the vicinity. To his comfort, there was merely a single creature in the locale. Chen inquired of Sam whether he had misremembered, but prior to Sam's response, Chen noticed a tree shift. Sam urged him to gaze upward, and as Chen did, he stood motionless in astonishment, contemplating what sort of creature he was witnessing. The system recognized it as a black iron-horned bovine. Concealed behind shelter, Stonebone anxiously inquired if they were genuinely intending to pursue that creature. Chen, equally strained, affirmed, and instructed them to establish a trap while he proceeded to assess it personally. The others gazed at Chen in admiration, believing he was remarkably impressive. Yet concealed by the tree, Chen was on the verge of tears, contemplating how circumstances had devolved to this point. He wished for the community to perish, so now he would need to rely on his nimbleness attribute. He glanced again and recognized that even the cow's front legs were larger than he was, prompting him to seek the opportune moment. Remaining composed, Chen attempted to greet it, but the moment it spotted him, its expression contorted and it bellowed. As he advanced nearer, the whole group surged forward in pursuit. Chen surged through the river, shouting for them to cease their pursuit of him. Upon returning to the clan, they were entirely misinformed, convinced that their monarch was valiantly leading the entire group away to safeguard them. As they murmured amongst one another, Chen leaped from a precipice without a moment's pause and touched down upon it. Abruptly, the ridge trembled, leaving Chen to ponder what had just transpired. Gazing downward, he noticed that one of the cows had crashed into the mountainside due to its inability to halt. This sparked an idea in Chen for guiding the entire herd down, because he had come to understand that the cattle were unable to ascend that high. As Chen glanced behind, he pondered his next course of action. He couldn't descend with those furious cattle lurking beneath, leaving him no option but to continue ascending. Chen ascended further, and upon his arrival at the summit, the panorama left him awestruck. It was precisely what he had been seeking. Consequently, he resolved to establish an empire upon that pristine territory. Ecstatic, he sensed that his expedition had genuinely commenced. Conversely, to the side, Sam observed the flock withdrawing and pondered the reason behind it, as well as the whereabouts of their ruler. Stonebone speculated that Chen could have been overwhelmed by the cattle. Thus, he ascended a tree to survey the surroundings, intending to retrieve Chen's axe if all else failed. However, the moment he climbed onto the tree, Chen's axe hurtled toward him and embedded itself nearby. Stonebone was astonished, and Chen ridiculed him for having the audacity to presume his monarch was deceased. Sam and the others felt a wave of relief as soon as they spotted Chen unharmed. Stonebone subsequently inquired if the cattle were truly that powerful. Chen mentioned his intention to utilize beef to fortify his physique, then inquired if they were interested in sampling some as well. Stonebone and Sam both declined. They claimed they were unable to triumph over those cattle, and even if they miraculously managed to do so, they still wouldn't consume them. The flesh. Chen burst out, inquiring whether they had overlooked him. He merely sought a reply. Alarmed, they all hastily affirmed. They were eager to consume it. Chen declared he would instruct them on how to create armaments and techniques for hunting with them. He intended to come back in 3 days and gather the cattle. In the following scene, Chen cleaved a tree in two with a single strike. All were astonished by his power. However, Stonebone approached and inquired why he had felled the tree, when it yielded no fruit whatsoever. Chen clarified that they intended to utilize it for the creation of armaments, urging everyone to pay close attention. He subsequently instructed them on how to convert wooden rods into javelins. While creating, Chen observed he possessed an enhancement to his technological trait. To illustrate the functionality of spears during a hunt, Chen demonstrated the technique of throwing one. The community was astonished. Prior to this, they had merely collected timber and never envisioned it could transform into something so lethal. Enthusiastically, they all expressed their desire to experiment with the spears themselves. Chen instructed Stonebone to proceed first. As Stonebone rehearsed, Chen continued to craft additional spears. After a couple of hours, the entire clan was practicing alongside them. While they were rehearsing, Chen summoned Liu Teng and Heiju Zhao and instructed them to strike him simultaneously. The pair charged at him in a rage. However, Chen deftly evaded both assaults with grace. Subsequently, he retaliated and dispatched Heiju Zhao. Furious, Liu Teng lunged once more, and this time succeeded in drawing some blood. All were taken aback. Chen informed Liu Teng that had the pointed tip of the spear been employed, he would have been deceased by now. Liu Teng proclaimed that their sovereign resembled a deity, asserting they could never conquer him. Chen clarified that they were dependent on brute force rather than technique. The spear's true benefit lay in its jianduan. They had to wield the keen point with accuracy against adversaries, or quarry. He then instructed them to commence with practicing their throws. He established a goal and instructed them to throw from afar. They each had their moment, yet none of them were able to strike it. Chen began to contemplate the possibility that none of them possessed any aptitude, and that he might have assessed them too hastily. Suddenly, a javelin pierced the mark. Chen blinked in astonishment, and the others were equally taken aback that someone had truly managed to score a hit. He pivoted and noticed Huang Shuo positioned there. Chen inquired if he had launched it, and Huang Shuo merely questioned if he had triumphed. Chen affirmed and presented him with a pair of spears as a token of appreciation. Abruptly, an individual hurried over to inform that a creature was nearing. Chen commanded everyone to ready themselves for combat. However, internally, he felt satisfied. This pursuit would provide them with genuine expertise. A creature erupted from the woodland and bellowed at. He charged at them immediately, exclaiming that it would be their meal this evening. At the onset of the confrontation, Chen instructed everyone to adhere to his directives, encircle the creature, and await his cue. He initiated the assault, and somehow the creature's velocity started to diminish. Chen instructed Stonebone and Huang Shi to launch their projectiles from the rear. Upon their impact, the creature erupted in fury and hurled Chen away, fracturing his spear. He understood he needed to act swiftly, yet prior to his action, Huang Shi hurled a javelin that struck the creature directly in the jaws. Chen was struck by Huang Shi's accuracy. Before long, the rest began to launch their javelins as well, while Chen remained elevated, stationed in a tree. Amidst the onslaught, the creature attempted to flee, but Chen intercepted it and called for Chen to attack. Chen leaped down towards the creature and thrust his spear into its skull. This merely plunged the creature into a frenzied rage. The spectacle caused everyone to stiffen with anxiety. Chen found himself in peril, still clutching the weapon he had employed. Without hesitation, Chen dashed forward and vaulted into the air, swinging his axe down with force. An explosion erupted, engulfing the entire vicinity in a haze of vapor. Everyone cried out with apprehension, questioning whether their monarch was still alive. As the haze dissipated, Chen urged them to cease their shouting, making light of the situation, that their voices resembled the invocation of phantoms. He then commended their rendition and proclaimed that they would dine lavishly that evening, which immediately exhilarated the entire group. Chen offered Sam exceptional commendation for his outstanding performance, then informed Huang Shi that he was the hunt's most valuable player. Henceforth, Huang Shi would accompany him in the hunt, and Chen would provide him with new armaments to evaluate. The setting changed once more after a while. Stonebone boastfully recounted to the members of the rival tribe how he had assisted Chen in vanquishing the creature. As Mia strolled by with a chunk of meat, Stonebone shouted and requested that she relinquish it. Mia declined, stating that the meat had been reserved for their monarch. She presented it to Chen instead, and he inquired whether they were genuinely going to consume it uncooked. Mia gazed at him and inquired about what was amiss with that. Chen responded that he recalled them preparing food over a flame previously, so he couldn't understand why they were consuming raw flesh now. Mia clarified that they had lost the source of heat from their last experience, leaving them no choice but to eat it in its uncooked state. This prompted Chen to reflect on how fire signified the dawn of civilization. It repelled predators, rendered shelters more secure and habitable, and enhanced nutrition. He resolved that the tribe required an additional blessing. He would instruct these rudimentary individuals on the methods of creating fire. He grasped a fractured spear and rubbed it against a timber block to ignite a fire. Subsequently, he instructed them to stuff wood shavings and tree fibers into a notch in the trunk, then rotate the stick between their hands to generate heat and ignite a flame. As the blaze emerged, the entire clan gazed in astonishment and commenced extolling Chen. Stonebone began shouting that their sovereign had conjured flames, ensuring that all were aware. Chen swiftly seized him and admonished him to silence, as maintaining a discreet demeanor was essential. Immediately afterward, Chen received a reward of 10 technology points, and he understood that those points were in fact quite simple to accumulate. Initially, he had no comprehension of their purpose, but after some investigation, he discovered that technology points could pinpoint genetic markers, with every identification valued at 10 points. As Chen pondered this, Sam approached and mentioned that during the partitioning of the meat, he observed indications that the wild boar had been suckling. This led him to suspect that young ones were in proximity, and after exploring the vicinity, he indeed discovered them. Instantly, Chen received a secondary mission: capture the wild piglets and tame them. The system inquired if he wished to accept. Chen dispatched Mia and Sam jointly to retrieve the cubs. He cautioned them to exercise caution and refrain from harming the young wild pigs. He desired each one of them to remain unharmed. Mia seized Sam's hand, and the pair dashed off towards the cubs. Chen resolved to construct a pig pen prior to their return. Thus, he summoned Stonebone to arrive following his meal. He had tasks for him. Then, the setting transitioned to dusk, with Stonebone lugging limbs and inquiring of his companions why their monarch desired such a large quantity. Upon their return to the lair, Stonebone observed individuals creating something he did not recognize. Confounded, he inquired of Huang Su what it was. Huang Su stated that the monarch referred to it as herbaceous cord, noting that it was more resilient than the tendrils they typically employed. He further elucidated the process of its creation. Initially, they needed to flatten the straw and subsequently intertwine it into cordage by overlapping the fibers. Stonebone grew increasingly irritated as he remained completely unaware of what was transpiring. Chen instructed him to cease lingering and to bring the branches over. Subsequently, he directed everyone to gather the twigs and affix the grass cords in a specific arrangement. They had to construct a minimum of 5 wooden structures. Subsequently, Chen instructed them to position the frames into the excavated holes he had prepared, then bind the tops together to create an enclosure form, enveloping it meticulously with hay. As soon as it was completed, the entire clan hurried into the pig pen and commenced battling for it, each desiring to reside there and produce the king's offspring. Chen tensed at the location and informed them that the pig pen was not intended for them. Merely. Subsequently, Sam and Mia returned, bearing the young ones. Chen instructed Sam to put the piglets into the pig pen. Upon hearing that, Stonebone dashed to Chen, weeping, exclaiming that he was incapable of such an act. He continued to object, inquiring how such a splendid nest could be squandered on feral hogs. Agon grasped onto Chen as well, aligning himself with Stonebone. They all yearned to reside in that nest. Stonebone remarked that they desired a dwelling where they could snuggle with the monarch. Chen, incensed, pushed them away, asserting he had no inclination to embrace a man. He then declared that he was indifferent to their current desire for the pigsty, but once suitable homes were constructed, neither of them would secure a place. Agon hesitated, then promptly declared that if a superior dwelling were available, he was content residing elsewhere, and Chen could allow Stonebone to take this one. Stonebone declined as well. Chen disregarded the complaints and instructed Sam to place all the wild pigs within the pig pen. Huang Shu approached and inquired why they were cultivating wild pigs if the creatures were intended for consumption. Chen inquired if they desired an abundance of food without the need for hunting. Huang Shu enthusiastically agreed, and Chen elaborated that by nurturing the cubs and breeding additional piglets, they would secure a reliable source of nourishment. That concluded the creature training mission, and Chen was granted his recompense. Upon opening it, he discovered a sachet of salt within the storage chest, and also acquired a technique for preparing fried clams. Chen gazed at the bounty, pondering whether the system intended for him to transform into a culinary expert, despite their rudimentary technological capabilities. The system suggested that completing recipe tasks might unveil exclusive rewards. Thus, upon noticing this, Chen opted to experiment with cooking. In the late hours of the night, the rest of the individuals were slumbering. Only Chen and Sam remained alert. Chen commended Sam for his diligent efforts each day. Sam stated that due to the chaos he had instigated during his capture, he believed it was only fair to suffer additional consequences. Chen chuckled, embraced him, and assured Sam that he bore no resentment. He subsequently inquired if any other tribes similar to theirs resided in the vicinity. Sam stated they had encountered several, yet none were amiable, and they appeared markedly dissimilar to his own kin. Chen inquired if he could elaborate on the locations of those tribes. Sam mentioned that he was aware of 3 neighboring factions: the Coconut Grove faction, the Bay faction, and the Colossal Stone faction. They were all quite distant. Accessing any of their domains required a minimum of an entire day and night of journeying. Chen inquired about specifics regarding each group. Sam started with the Coconut Grove group, comprising approximately 30 to 40 individuals, averse to conflict, proficient in long-distance journeys, and guided by a formidable woman. Following was the Bay faction, consisting of approximately 30 or 40 members, yet considerably more formidable. As per Sam's account, they were perpetually engaged in conflicts with one another. Ultimately, he detailed the Colossal Rock Tribe, the most formidable among the trio, and the most populous. They typically resided on a mountain to the southwest and descended occasionally. Sam mentioned that he had heard the leader of the Colossal Stone Tribe possessed celestial strength and could slay a tiger with his bare hands. Upon considering everything, Chen concluded that if Sam's intel was accurate, the Coconut Grove faction would be the most suitable initial group to integrate. The others appeared excessively burdensome and unpredictable, so he would require a tranquil method to entice them. Then, perceiving an individual approaching from behind, Chen pivoted and discovered Mia embracing him from behind. She inquired why he was still awake, and if he desired to engage in something thrilling with her. Tensing his muscles, Chen responded with a resolute negative. Mia positioned herself in a peculiar manner and inquired if she resembled a kitten. Chen grew increasingly anxious and swiftly took hold of Sam's hand, indicating that Sam appeared to require assistance with an issue. He would converse with her later, after which he hurried away with him. Mia appeared somewhat wounded by his response. The following morning, the setting altered once more. Chen and Sam stood by the shore, anticipating the arrival of the Bay clan. Before long, the Bay tribe reached the coastline to pursue a dodo bird. Chen was pleased they had ultimately shown up after a night of anticipation, but then he observed the Bay clan members beginning to clash amongst themselves over the bird. He contemplated if his community could assimilate the Bay faction, not merely to increase in population, but to acquire assets such as dodo birds. Sam emphasized that their group comprised fewer than 50% of the Bay clan's population. Thus, they were unable to triumph in a straightforward confrontation. Chen believed more powerful armaments could alter the situation, but initially, they needed to manage the cattle herd. Subsequently, those fresh resources could assist them in creating even superior weapons and equipment. With that, they returned to the lair, and all present illuminated the moment Chen arrived. Stonebone remarked that they had believed their sovereign had deserted them. Chen expressed remorse for causing concern among everyone, and informed them that there was still an abundance of tasks to accomplish. He instructed Stonebone to continue honing his spear-throwing skills, and assigned Huang Shu the responsibility of instructing the others, granting him a single day to enhance their abilities to the fullest extent. Then Mia approached, clutching a leaf, claiming it was quite pleasant to utilize following a visit to the restroom. Chen responded that he truly required assistance in honing wooden pikes, Therefore, Mia ought to assemble the women and acquire stones. After a while, Mia reappeared alongside the other women, each bearing stones. She inquired whether these rocks would be suitable. Chen affirmed this and proceeded to elaborate that they were required to hone the stones on a moist stone until they developed a keen edge or tip. Subsequently, secure the sharpened stone to a timber shaft with cord, and just like that, they had created a rock-pointed armament. The females were astounded, yet Chen became irritated when the prize for it ended up being merely a single point. He subsequently instructed them to continue adhering to his guidance and present to him their creations. Mia swiftly summoned Chen, stating that she had already completed one. When he glanced over, he discovered she had crafted a double-edged axe, and he complimented her. Thrilled, Mia beamed. At that instance, Chen activated a concealed function known as talent identification. Upon evaluating Mia, the system indicated that she possessed aptitude in tool fabrication. Mia observed him gazing and timidly inquired why he was regarding her in such a manner. Chen disregarded the inquiry and instructed the women to craft as many spears and axes as they could. Gradually, they crafted a total of 30 spears and axes, and Chen commended Mia for creating more than half of them. He then observed her hands were scraped and bruised from polishing the stone. When Chen expressed worry, Mia flushed immediately. The other girls gathered around and inquired whether he held any affection for them as well. Chen expressed that it wasn't as they presumed, yet they had already approached him quite closely. He quickly departed, declaring that it was sufficient labor for the day and that everyone could take a break. Then, he made his way to the men's training zone to observe their practice session. A timber branch abruptly hurtled toward Chen. He evaded it precisely at the right moment and recognized it as an aspect of the clan's instruction. Huang Shu had evidently been instructing them effectively. Chen inquired about their progress, and Huang Shu responded that everyone had made significant advancements. They were now able to strike targets effortlessly. Chen's identification of talent revealed that Huang Shu was a master of throwing. Huang Shu remarked that Lu Ting possessed considerable strength, yet he miscalibrated his throws and only managed to unleash his complete potential alongside Stone Bone. He also pointed out that Leng Gu Chui was the first to thoroughly grasp the technique. What astonished him the most was the synergy between Huang Shu and Stone Bone. Individually, they were mediocre, but in unison, they alternated 4 lances simultaneously and achieved the finest outcomes. Chen felt satisfied. At this pace, confronting the herd of black bulls should be effortless. Stonebone inquired if he was certain. Chen agreed, but to ensure caution, they would also bring along their hidden advantage. Huang Shu fluttered his eyelids in astonishment and inquired about the concealed advantage he referred to. Chen retrieved numerous dark leaves, instructed everyone to observe closely, and commanded them to collect as many as they could. He cautioned them against contacting the foliage with exposed wounds. The vegetation possessed a natural paralyzer. That evening, Chen commenced shaping a rock. Mia showed up with all the javelins and inquired why he had chiseled a shallow indentation into the stone. Chen remarked that it was a cannon, and she would soon understand the reason. He instructed her to assemble the women and utilize the stone mallet to pulverize the foliage within, then apply the mixture onto the wooden spearheads. Lu Ting approached, mentioning that the gentlemen were also eager to assist with the club. Chen advised them to relax instead. He would require their vigor for the pursuit at dawn. After a while, Chen sat, enjoying barbecued meat and scattering salt on top. Mia abruptly hurled a spear in his direction, signaling that the application was complete. Chen arose, instructed the women to remain and protect the camp and the children, and then commanded everyone else to accompany him to the mountain. The clan erupted with enthusiasm and seized their armaments. They were prepared to demonstrate to those creatures what they were capable of. Subsequently, they arrived at the summit. Agen inquired whether it was truly acceptable for their sovereign to serve as solitary bait. He was obviously anxious about the threat. Stonebone replied that their monarch was exceptionally powerful, so he ought to be all right. Sam interrupted and instructed everyone to prepare. Something was stirring by the riverbank. Stonebone instructed Mia and the other women to distribute spears promptly, particularly to Sam, as soon as they were situated on the mountain. Their monarch was jeopardizing everything, and losing him wasn't an alternative. Thus, this is what transpired. 10 minutes prior, Chen had been strolling around the dark bowls, contemplating that escaping to Stone Mountain, as he had done previously, remained the most favorable path. However, to remain vigilant, he opted to entice a lesser one initially. He approached a diminutive bull and flung a rock at. He then vociferously proclaimed himself the leader of the gang and challenged it to confront him. The ebony bull immediately erupted in fury, and, without warning, 3 bulls surged after Chen. While he sprinted, Chen called out for Stonebone to focus on the initial dark bull. Stonebone promptly commanded everyone to get ready. Subsequently, the javelins soared simultaneously. At one point, it proved effective. The dark bulls sustained injuries and were struck. With that introduction, Sam hurled javelins directly aimed at their throats. The bulls collided with the mountain, and Chen jumped towards a projection to ascend further. However, his grip faltered. In the final moment, Stonebone seized him and drew him to safety. Chen instructed everyone to persist in their onslaught while the bulls were impaired. Thus the offensive carried on. Stonebone advanced and began orchestrating the blows. Observing him, Chen recognized genuine leadership potential and comprehended why Stonebone excelled at guiding others. He concluded that Stonebone was deserving of being nurtured into a true leader. Stonebone promptly came back and conveyed that the bulls appeared to be settling down. Chen felt satisfied. The sedative was taking effect more rapidly than anticipated. Then, Sam exclaimed that the remainder of the group was rushing towards them as well. Chen was amazed by their speed. Nevertheless, he urged everyone to remain calm. This was an element of the strategy. They merely needed to complete the 3 below and ensure that none eluded capture. The dark bulls attempted to retreat, yet their movements were sluggish. Aware that the venom had taken effect, Chen instructed everyone to aim for their legs and prevent their escape. Stonebone subsequently commanded all to cast, and the trio of bulls ultimately fell to the earth. Chen instructed them to halt, yet Stonebone contended that this was not the moment for leniency. They needed to confront these 3 prior to the arrival of the others. Chen inquired about the number of spears remaining. Mia replied that they still possessed 28. Subsequently, Chen instructed Sam to tally the approaching group, and Sam approximated there were about 20 males. Chen remarked that this was precisely why he had decided to put an end to it. They lacked an abundance of spears to squander. Huangshu inquired whether that implied relinquishing all the work they had dedicated to the 3 black bulls. Chen replied in the negative. This remained an element of the strategy. He had never envisioned a diminutive team confronting the entire group directly. From the outset, the actual objective was the commander. Once that chief was eliminated, the remainder would disperse. To prolong the engagement, they required a lure. Hence, those ebony bulls had to be kept alive and could not be permitted to flee. Chen mentioned that he had initially intended to employ solely 1 bull, but the additional 2 had resulted in significantly higher spear expenses than anticipated. Abruptly, Sam cried out that he could spot the dominant black bull, and it appeared to be a colossal beast. The leader bellowed, and the entire group surged forward, intent on colliding with the mountain. Initially, Chen and his companions questioned, had the bulls lost their minds? However, Chen swiftly discerned that the employer had no desire to engage in combat at that moment. Then they sensed it. The mountain was beginning to crumble. Chen shouted for everyone to retreat and seek shelter. However, Mia was unable to escape swiftly and tumbled as the slope fractured. Without a moment's pause, Chen leaped after her and beckoned for Aigun to accompany. Haizu Zhao and Leng Gutre also descended to assist. At that moment, there was no alternative but to battle. Haizu Zhao inquired of Aigun whether they ought to assault the bulls. However, Aigun advised him against behaving impulsively and to await their commander's instructions. Chen, on the other hand, felt anxious. He recognized that the powerful supervisor had already discerned his scheme. That insight exasperated him. Stonebone instructed those remaining on the mountain to safeguard their chief. However, Chen yelled for them to cease. They had to remain elevated and assault with lances. At that moment, the conflict genuinely commenced. Chen battled with his hatchet while the others brandished lances and rock hatchets. By collaborating, safeguarding, and assaulting the bulls in synchronized surges, they succeeded in injuring numerous individuals among them. Stonebone capitalized on the opportunity and implored the individuals above to hurl javelins onto the flock. Several bulls fell, and abruptly the entire herd came to a halt, as the supervisor appeared to utter something to them. To Chen's astonishment, the bulls started retreating. He pondered whether they had been commanded to withdraw. Thus the leader could contend independently. Then, precipitation began to cascade heavily, and the chief of the herd advanced, took a deep breath, and exhaled fire from its maw. Chen promptly yelled for everyone to disperse and evade. The explosion was so powerful, it created a breach in the mountain, even creating a route to the summit. The clan was appalled. No one could discern whether it was a bellow or a sonic wave, but the force shattered their spirits in an instant. Observing that, Chen instructed Agun to escort Mia and the others northward, while he diverted the chief bull's focus himself. He advised Stonebone to be prepared for his cue and confront the domineering leader, announcing that he would be its adversary. They collided directly, with Chen attempting to restrain it. However, the dominant bull effortlessly tossed him aside. Chen contemplated utilizing the route the creature had forcibly created. However, the formidable leader pursued him and collided with the peak, causing a massive detonation. All observers became uneasy, fearful that their chief had perished. Nonetheless, they declined to withdraw and determined to combat until the conclusion. In an instant, Chen's axe gleamed and collided with the chief bull's skull. He remained alive. He had endured by utilizing the gap created in the mountain just moments prior. Chen even ridiculed the leader for showing him mercy. Deep down, he was aware that he was severely injured. Upon witnessing Chen's existence, the community exhaled a surge of comfort. However, Chen called out to Stonebone to prepare and await his instruction. The altercation continued, accompanied by Ajin and Heiju Jiao, attempting to divert the supervisor's attention so that Chen could launch an attack from the rear. Ajin valiantly jumped in, only to be ensnared and injured by the creature's tusk. Chen surged ahead and struck at the bull leader's visage, liberating Agen from the horn's point. The supervisor released another wave of fire. However, everyone evaded, and Chen responded with a precise blow. The impact created an injury in the creature's form. Chen promptly shouted for Stonebone and Sam to direct their spears at that injury, strike the target, and the dominant bull wavered before plummeting to the earth. 4. For a brief instant, all were curious if they had ultimately triumphed, and began commemorating. However, Chen remained restless. Despite their leader being incapacitated, the remainder of the group simply lingered, anticipating. Suddenly, the dominant bull sprang back to its feet and charged at Chen, releasing an intense torrent of fire. Stonebone and Huangxi were astonished by the spectacle, and Chen tensed as well, recognizing that he had momentarily dropped his defenses, a potentially lethal lapse. At this moment, the formidable leader wrenched the javelin from its own flesh and flung it directly at Chen. Injured and too sluggish to advance, Chen contemplated that this could be the conclusion. To his astonishment, Mia intervened and seized the spear herself. Chen, stunned in astonishment, a cascade of recollections with Mia rushing into his thoughts. A surge of unadulterated fury abruptly engulfed Chen. Despite the system alerting him that his body was reaching its limits, Chen disregarded it and vaulted directly towards the beast. He descended with his weapon, channeling all his strength, severing the beast leader from crown to base. In this instance, the creature was genuinely bifurcated by Chen's full-force blow. Driven by rage, Chen bellowed at the surviving bulls to confront him, confronting any creature that sought to perish to advance. Yet as the group exchanged glances, Chen advanced a step forward, causing them to shatter, fleeing in terror. After their escape, Chen finally felt at ease, but his body quickly alerted him that his life was at risk. An instant later, he coughed, lost consciousness, and began to fade away, submerging gradually. Everyone hurried over. However, prior to losing consciousness, Chen glanced at Mia and instructed them to retrieve the coagulating salve and administer it. A few days later, in a swine pen, Chen ultimately roused from his unresponsive condition. As he opened his eyes, he discovered Yu positioned in front of him. His initial inquiry was if this was the pig pen he had constructed. However, Yu shook her head. Following the drive of the bulls, they had relocated to this spot, and this structure was constructed for him. She instructed him to remain where he was, while she went to inform everyone that he had regained consciousness. Chen halted her, inquiring about Mia and Lengu Chui initially. Yu stated that they discovered Lengu Chui on the brink of death, but he has since recuperated. Swift. Since rising, he had been vigilantly watching over Chen's refuge. Mia experienced greater injury, she remarked, yet the monarch's celestial remedy rescued her. Provided that she continued to recuperate, would recuperate. Everyone else was well too. Gratified, Chen listened as Yu remarked that over the previous 4 days, everyone's state had become stable. Chen was startled. What was she implying? 4 days? He scrutinized the system and realized she was accurate. 4 days had elapsed, leaving him with just 11 days to complete the task. The objective. Yu, perplexed, observed that their monarch frequently gazed into vacant space as though preoccupied with contemplation. He attempted to rise but was unsuccessful. Yu encouraged him to take a break, yet Chen maintained that he was all right, and instructed her to call for Stonebone immediately. She agreed with a nod and rushed out of the shed. Isolated, Chen understood that, devoid of any combat capability or deterrent, if others discovered the reality, their endeavor could disintegrate in an instant. Having moved to their new location, they required a fence without delay, followed by robust timber barriers for authenticity. Safeguarding. Upon Stonebone's arrival, Chen instructed him to remain outdoors, then murmured confidential directives to none other could perceive. Stonebone departed immediately to manage the task Chen designated, yet Chen recognized that it still fell short. They could not replicate the previous error. This time, every aspect had to be infallible. Subsequently, Chen informed Lengu Chui that he had an additional assignment. Lengu Chui inquired about the specifics, and Chen instructed him to retrieve the Black Bull King's remains and conceal them, ensuring the hide remained as undamaged as feasible. To Lengu Chui's astonishment, Chen even relinquished his own weapon for the position. Following. They departed, Yu once more informed Chen, to repose. He declined, stating he still required to converse with her. He invited her to enter so they could discuss in solitude. As soon as she arrived, Chen clarified that he had dismissed the others since he required a significant task for her. Yu promptly consented, then began removing her garments, assuming he desired something affectionate. Flustered, Chen shouted at Yu to put them back on upon comprehending her. Error. Yu flushed. Chen promptly explained that he desired her to perform an act, as he intended to dispatch an individual to engage in discussions with the Coconut Grove clan and convince them to yield to Chen's principle. Yu, on edge, inquired if the more substantial Coconut Grove clan would genuinely consent to unite them. Chen stated that this is precisely why they needed to exhibit their power and compel the Coconut Grove clan to yield immediately. He provided 2 justifications for selecting Yu. Firstly, the community was governed by females, enabling her, as a woman, to engage more effectively alongside them. Moreover, solely she was aware of his genuine state, that his exhaustive assault had devastated his physique. The salve prevented it from deteriorating further, yet he still required appropriate care. Grinning, Yu inquired whether they intended to intimidate the Coconut Grove clan through deception. She remarked that she comprehended precisely how to proceed, so Chen could simply relax and step aside. It to her. Occasionally. Subsequently, Sam and Yu were en route to the Coconut Grove clan. Sam cautioned that, regardless of the clan's dispute, this was not the moment to incite them. Yu indicated her comprehension, and they continued onward. Upon their eventual arrival, Sam indicated a fountain where the Coconut Grove girls were swimming. Subsequently, he recognized the leader of the clan, the individual for whom they had arrived to encounter. However, while they were conversing, a few Coconut Grove members noticed those individuals. A small amount. Subsequently, Yu and Sam were presented to Lisa, the head of the Coconut Grove clan. The young women conveyed that they had apprehended the duo attempting to stealthily enter, asserting to be emissaries requesting a meeting with their chief. Sam objected, asserting that they were not typical guests, but representatives designated by their monarch. Lisa solely ridiculed them, asserting that Yu resembled a servitor, while the men delivered fish remnants that scarcely nourished anyone for a couple of days later. Subsequently, she instructed that Sam be distanced from Yu. Yu retorted that she had anticipated the Coconut Grove monarch to be more astute. As she was not, the substantial heap of meat they intended to provide would instead be bestowed upon the Bay clan. Alternatively, Lisa halted her group and instructed Yu to proceed. She then inquired whether she had genuinely established a massive quantity of flesh. IU verified this, clarifying she referred to the colossal black bulls near the northern river. Lisa inquired if they wished to collaborate with the Coconut Grove clan to pursue the herd. IU chuckled and advised her not to undervalue them. They had previously eliminated the black bulls, and the river region was now under the control of... The women of Coconut Grove were astonished, murmuring that IU must have been fabricating the story. Previously, their very own faction had almost been crushed by that identical group. Lisa stood up and inquired if IU comprehended what occurred to individuals who deceived her. IU remained unfazed. She remarked that even the mightiest bull had succumbed to their sovereign, and if Lisa was skeptical, she could witness it firsthand. When a young woman attempted to caution Lisa, IU chuckled, jesting that if their monarch so wished, he could level the whole Coconut Grove tribe. Sam supported her assertion, stating they had not arrived to engage in battle. They presented offerings and a summons from their monarch. Why question their genuine intentions? IU then retorted that if the queen was too fearful to appear in person, she might at least dispatch someone to retrieve it. The flesh. That sharpness in IU's tone caused Lisa to tighten, yet she still cautioned them against attempting any tricks. An instant later, IU and Sam came back with Lisa and her team. Sam declared that they had returned. However, Stonebone reprimanded him not to create such a commotion and to assist with the homes instead. Upon hearing this, one of Lisa's daughters inquired about the nature of those residences. IU subsequently notified Chen that the Coconut Grove clan had come. As soon as Lisa laid eyes on Chen, she tensed, perceiving a strong aura of lethal intent, sliding away from him, as though she were confronting some primordial creature. In reality, Chen had intentionally adorned himself like a primitive beast. He informed IU that she had performed admirably, and his formidable presence only heightened Lisa's discomfort. Then, a noise emerged from the shrubs. It was Mia, Longu Chui, and Aegon concealed there. Chen instructed all the injured to keep themselves hidden, but Agun confessed he was merely intrigued by the appearance of the Coconut Grove Queen. Chen subsequently expressed gratitude to Lisa and her group for acquiescing to his appeal and traveling all the way to Coda, their domain. One girl from Coconut Grove promptly inquired about the location of the meet. Chen nonchalantly remarked that it was close by, and they could gather as much as they could transport. Upon their arrival, they were immobilized by the spectacle of the genuine mound of flesh. Ayu-chan and Lutang were already slicing it. One Coconut Grove girl approached to retrieve some, but they cautioned her that the flesh was exceptionally difficult. She attempted to slice it with a wooden rod, and the rod fractured beneath the tension. Lutang and Ayu-chan erupted into laughter. The young woman shouted, inquiring what was so amusing, and remarked that they had only captured the bulls due to the turmoil within the herd. Ayu-chan retorted, inquiring if she wished to battle. At that moment, Chen's hatchet shattered into the earth, separating them, causing the Coconut Grove girls to recoil in dread. He had cast it there to diffuse the dispute. Lisa, evidently shaken, inquired about the nature of that weapon. It was considerably superior to their ironwood twigs and skeletal blades. Chen instructed her to utilize his pangu axe to slice meat for the Coconut Grove. Ayu-chan grumbled that it was the females who instigated it. However, Chen decisively commanded him to comply with the instructions given. Griping, Ayu-chan acquiesced and softly voiced her thoughts about the girls. "We're fortunate." Chen informed Lisa that he would ensure she could obtain the meat without any challenges. He consistently honored his commitments. It was his tenet. Anxiously, Lisa inquired about how he had triumphed over the bull herd. Chen responded that whether her understanding stemmed from reciprocal trust or first-hand experience hinged on the forthcoming events. He then advised Lisa to conclude her efforts for the day, take the meat, and depart. Lisa responded that he appeared quite... Lisa referred to him as heartless. Chen, on the other hand, grew tense. His theatrical axe toss had been somewhat excessive, and without the buffalo hide dressing, his injury would probably have reopened. Subsequently, it occurred. Blood began to ooze out, and Chen immediately felt a surge of concern. Fortunately, IU diverted Lisa's attention, providing him with just the right moment to conceal the injury. IU informed Lisa that they possessed several formidable armaments they could present to the Coconut Grove faction. However, Lisa glanced back and declined, stating that those arms were not appropriate for her community. She informed Chen that the Coconut Grove faction possessed formidable arms as well, ones they had not revealed to him thus far, and wished they would never have to employ. Subsequently, Lisa instructed her tribe members to gather whatever they could and return. IU remarked that if it proved insufficient, they could always return. However, the sooner the better, as other factions still required their portion. During the return journey, Lisa inquired about the progress of the inquiry. Several additional girls emerged to provide their accounts. Lisa had covertly positioned them in proximity to observe everything from concealment. One of them, Maya, mentioned that they witnessed the men constructing something referred to as a dwelling, and from within they occasionally caught the sounds of wild boar growls, suggesting that there could be boars housed there. Lisa was astonished, pondering whether Chen had truly constructed such an admirable refuge for wild pigs. Maya remarked that even more astonishingly, Chen's family appeared to have harnessed the abilities of the fire deity. Lisa categorically stated that such a thing was inconceivable. Maya described witnessing flames emerge from thin air and utilized it to grill meat. She paused momentarily before elaborating further, but Lisa urged her to express herself directly. Maya then expressed that Chen's lineage comprised just a bit more than 10 individuals in total, comprising several youngsters and elderly men. Nevertheless, she had a suspicion that they were intentionally concealing their actual count. Lisa insisted on understanding why they had not conducted a more thorough search. Maya remarked that the adjacent trees had been felled, thus approaching would have revealed them. They were left with no option but to observe from the forest at a distance. Lisa responded succinctly. All right, then abruptly struck them with her whip. She cautioned that if they offered excuses once more, the next consequence would be significantly more severe than a lashing. Maya inclined her head and expressed gratitude to Lisa for her compassion. Returning to Chen's encampment, he ultimately eased a bit as IU approached to inquire about his well-being. Chen confessed that the ordeal had significantly impacted him. He also observed that IU possessed a genuine talent for conversing. She then inquired, half playfully, if he favored her over the queen of the Coconut Grove. Flustered, Chen promptly clarified that she shouldn't misconstrue his feelings. He requested IU to summon the men concealed outside so they could assist him in recuperating, and mentioned that Lungu Chui would oversee the entrance until he was completely restored. IU consented, then remarked that he appeared quite awesome. That caused Chen to uncomfortably flush. Merely. Soon after, Sam appeared, remarking that Chen was truly exceptional. The Coconut Grove tribe had positioned sentinels around their encampment, precisely as he had anticipated. Chen inquired about the alternative assignment he had bestowed upon him. Sam remarked that it was complete. The Coconut Grove group only perceived what Chen desired them to perceive, overlooking all that they were not intended to observe. Chen commended his endeavor, and Sam beamed, expressing that it was zilch. He was departing to assist Stonebone and the rest in constructing the dwelling. Once Sam departed, IU inquired if Chen genuinely believed the Coconut Grove faction would unite them voluntarily. Chen stated it was premature to determine. The strategy was merely partially finished. The subsequent occasion the Coconut Grove group arrived, they could commence the latter portion. Chen subsequently returned to his storage unit to recuperate and examined his provisions, noting that he possessed merely 11 days remaining, far from sufficient time to completely recover. He requested the mechanism to unlock the storage facility and discovered merely a sachet of salt and a solitary tube of clotting ointment remaining. The system additionally indicated that his axe had transformed into the axe of Pengu. Astonished, Chen pondered when that had occurred. He became even more anxious when he recognized he must have overlooked it after giving the axe to Lungu Chui that morning. He then inspected his javelins, and the trigger criterion displayed on the monitor indicated blood offering. Chen suspected it had activated when he was injured, amidst the struggle. According to the account, crafting the universe required exact timing, neither premature nor delayed. He momentarily contemplated if additional arms possessed concealed attributes as well. Similar to his axe, yet abandoned the notion. Each armament likely possessed distinct requirements. it was wiser to entrust it to destiny. Subsequently, he assessed the remaining possessions and noticed that the coagulating salve was sufficient for just one additional application, so he opted to reserve it for an exceptionally urgent situation. Alternatively, he would need to rely on the hatchet to pursue any beings that were in close proximity. He estimated that the flesh acquired by the Coconut Grove group would endure for 2 days, and with time dwindling, he needed to depend on Sam for the time being. Thus, he requested Lengu Chui to call for Sam. There was additional information, tasks to complete. Eventually, Sam showed up and inquired about the issue. Chen questioned whether he recalled the dark bulls they had chased away. He subsequently commanded him to locate them within a span of 2 days and give a report. Sam departed immediately, exclaiming that he would come back as soon as he located the dark bulls. Observing his departure, Chen reflected that everyone was putting in considerable effort. Thus, he resolved to assemble presents for the tribe. As Sam sought out the remaining black bulls, Chen focused on those presents. Following. After 2 days, he glanced at the display and observed that only 9 days were left for the undertaking. He had also acquired technical credits for crafting a stone spear tip, a bone flute, and a bullhorn water container. He intended to present the whistle to Stonebone to facilitate more efficient commands during combat, or in the course of expeditions. The stone-tipped projectiles would enhance wooden spears, increasing their effectiveness should the Coconut Grove tribe become aggressive. Ultimately, the megaphone water bottle was for Sam. Subsequently, IU appeared with pleasant tidings. The residences were completed. Chen remarked that they ought to depart. Behold the dwelling. Upon his arrival, Stonebone confidently displayed their creation. Then Stonebone bellowed, inquired whether it was uncool. Chen didn't genuinely enjoy it to a great extent, but for the moment he responded, "Indeed." Everyone applauded. At last, they were free from confinement and no longer needed to seek out branches. While the others rejoiced, Chen remained somewhat disheartened. Nonetheless, Stonebone secured the straw entrance, completing the framework. As soon as it was established, Chen acquired 10 technical points for constructing the dwelling. Observing meticulously, he recognized that the community had transformed greatly since his arrival. Initially, they resembled untamed animals, subsisting on primal instinct, pelts, and liquid sustenance. Presently, their conduct had evolved, and their intellect was becoming increasingly evident. Chen contemplated whether all of this stemmed from the system, as though it were accelerating the very process of evolution. He instructed them to inform him immediately upon Sam's arrival, then proceeded to his workshop. Before too long, Sam burst in, exclaiming that he had discovered them. Chen commended him, then proclaimed that they could at last commence the latter portion of the strategy. He informed all present to pursue him, then took Stonebone to the side, expressing that he required a moment to speak. Moments later, Chen concluded detailing the strategy and inquired if anyone had any questions. Stonebone anxiously inquired whether it would truly be effective and expressed concern about the potential danger. Sam advised him to remain calm, assuring him that he would take care of it. When the time arrived, Stonebone simply needed to guide the rest. Chen subsequently presented Stonebone with the whistle, remarking that it would facilitate directing the team significantly. He also informed Sam that he had arranged a present for him and would deliver it following the mission. Sam was elated. At last, Chen beamed and urged them that as soon as they recognized his cue, they needed to respond without delay. Huang Shu, Sam, Stonebone, and Lu Tung all departed to execute Chen's directives. Chen could only ponder how severely they were strained for personnel, leaving him with no alternative but to allocate tasks even to the wounded. He instructed Ayu to have Mia and Lengu Qi construct a larger bonfire in front of the timber dwelling, but to refrain from igniting it for the time being. Ayu inquired whether it was intended for the visitors who were on the verge of arriving. Chen replied affirmatively, pondering if the lure they had prepared 2 days prior would be effective. After a while, a young woman was engaged in her tasks when she abruptly noticed a sizable gathering from the Coconut Grove faction making their way to their encampment. She promptly dashed over and informed Chen about the Coconut Orchard group had reached. Within the residence, Ayu had been caring for him, and Chen relished being treated in such a manner. He even believed that once he conquered the Coconut Grove faction, he would have both Lisa and Ayu looking after him. Upon learning that the Coconut Grove tribe had arrived, Ayu stepped outside to welcome her. She beckoned Lisa into the castle, mentioning that their monarch was anticipating. The term castle astonished Lisa. How had Chen's villagers transformed a thatched hut into a timber residence so swiftly? She continued to gaze, contemplating how swiftly Chen's lineage had transformed. Then Lisa grinned and inquired if her monarch was too fearful to emerge and greet them. She mentioned that they did not wish to inconvenience Chen's family once more, but this time they intended to receive a greater amount of meat as recompense. She additionally mentioned that her team desired to meet their new neighbors, so she had accompanied them, hoping they wouldn't intimidate Chen's associates. Ayu chuckled and mentioned that their monarch had previously commanded the preparation of 40 servings of meat, allowing Lisa the freedom to claim them, although it may appear that she had not brought along 40 individuals. Lisa subsequently inquired why Ayu had not become a member of the Coconut Grove community if her feelings were so profound, even extending an invitation for her to stand alongside her. Ayu expressed her gratitude, but conveyed that she had already been captivated by her king's power long ago. She graciously declined, then guided them to the location of the meat storage, and mentioned that if they were unable to transport it all, they were free to consume as much as they desired, right there. The location. She mentioned that if slicing the meat proved difficult, they could request assistance from Chen's fighters. Lisa instructed her team to dine and remain composed, while she personally went to meet Chen. Upon Lisa's arrival, Chen welcomed her with effortless cordiality. Perceiving Chen in that elegant residence caused Lisa to blush. Nevertheless, she maintained her composure and inquired whether this was genuinely his home, conceding that it appeared quite impressive. Chen observed her fascination with the residence and chose to dazzle her even more. He stated that this was merely a provisional refuge. Once the actual palace was constructed, this one would be transferred to the clans. Lisa stood motionless, then inquired whether he genuinely intended to permit his people to reside in such a location. Chen remarked that he was aware it was challenging at present, but in the future he would construct superior stone dwellings for them. Suddenly, without any forewarning, Lisa abruptly yanked, drew forth her lash, and ensnared Chen with it, bending in near. Strained, Chen inquired about her actions. Lisa declared that no one comprehended men more profoundly than she did, and she possessed numerous strategies to persuade him to relinquish those peculiar items willingly. She pondered whether that would suffice to shatter him. Chen perceived it as excessively exhilarating, yet maintained a serious expression and chuckled. Did she genuinely believe this could compel him, assuming he had no contingency strategy? Internally, nevertheless, Chen was in a state of turmoil. He lacked any form of support. The situation had spiraled beyond his grasp, and his unresolved wounds rendered combat exceedingly challenging. To Chen's delight, Ayu unexpectedly arrived and proclaimed that the banquet was prepared. However, when Ayu witnessed Chen and Lisa in that manner, she was taken aback and exclaimed that Chen ought not to engage in such behavior. Lisa retracted the whip, and Chen remarked that they had conversed sufficiently. It was time to venture outside and grill. He inquired of Ayu if the blaze had been ignited. In the meantime, Lisa contemplated whether Chen's tranquility amidst her presence. The strain suggested he genuinely harbored a concealed strategy, or perhaps he simply lacked a fear of mortality. In contrast to her own kin, his calmness appeared remarkably distinct. Outside, the Coconut Grove girls joyfully beckoned Lisa, remarking that the aroma of the barbecued meat was sensational. Chen also provided Ayu with some salt to distribute among the Coconut Grove group. Ayu shared it, stating, "Everyone should add a touch to the meat to enhance the flavor." Lisa fiercely inquired about what Ayu was adding to the meal. Ayu retorted that if Lisa was apprehensive, she needn't partake. However, as soon as Lisa observed her fellow clan members commending the taste, she comprehended. Chen was delighted as well, wishing they would continue to consume and grant Sam and Stonebone additional time to complete their task. The focus transitioned to Stonebone and the others, lingering by the dark cattle. Liu Tang inquired why they were pursuing bulls once more, when their supply of meat was already sufficient. Stonebone declared that they had not come to pursue. He informed Liu Tang should cease inquiries and adhere to instructions. Subsequently, Huang Shu's cue arrived, and they all launched their javelins at the ebony cattle. The entire flock surged forward. Stonebone hollered to Sam that the bulls were hurtling in his direction. Sam reassured them not to be concerned, and jumped from the tree, plunging his spear into the bull's throat. Upon striking the target, Sam exclaimed that he had accomplished it. The bull belonged to him now. Injured, the bull commenced flailing and charging recklessly. Sam compelled himself to remain courageous. He was aware that he could manage it. In the distance, Huang Shou observed the flock veering toward the east. Stonebone gestured to Sam, and Sam recognized that the path was incorrect. He guided the bull toward the right, propelling it swiftly westward instead. The scene transitions back to Chen's sanctuary, where the girls from the coconut grove were dining contentedly and comfortably. Chen anticipated the cue when, unexpectedly, a guard from the coconut grove group rushed towards the lair. Lisa spotted her and insisted on understanding why she appeared so frantic. Amidst her weeping, the girl watched as a pack of frenzied black bulls charged into their encampment, obliterating everything in sight, while their protectors were unable to halt the chaos. Lisa sprang to her feet and commanded everyone to return to the headquarters, vowing to make those furious bulls regret it. Yet internally, she felt rattled. Her tribe had consistently avoided the dark bulls, so what had unexpectedly triggered this? Returning to the Coconut Grove encampment, the young women were unable to herd the bulls away. Launched projectiles, yet the projectiles scarcely affected the creatures. Thus, they hurried into hand-to-hand confrontation to rescue the sisters' snare beneath. However, the instant one girl leaped down, a bull charged and almost struck her once more. At that crucial moment, Lisa came and ensnared the bull's leg with her dash. Upon catching sight of her, the others perked up. Lisa yelled at the frenzied creatures, enraged that they had the audacity to harm her kin. She released one bull, yet that still fell short. It rose again and surged directly towards Lisa, launching her through the atmosphere and dislodging the lash from her grasp. Chen arrived precisely at the right moment and intercepted her. He inquired whether she was okay. Lisa, exasperated yet composed, replied that she was well. She simply couldn't comprehend the origin of the bulls. Close by, Huang Shu, Sam, Luteng, and Stonebone clumsily concealed their faces, as they were the culprits. Chen then glowered at the bulls and snapped, questioning if they had forgotten their suffering once their wounds had mended. The bulls bellowed and charged forward, causing Chen to become uneasy. Did it fail to identify him? Was the mantle crafted from the Black Bull King's pelt not formidable enough? Then, to his comfort, the bull began to retreat. Chen exclaimed that it appeared the flock had acquired a new ruler. He informed the chief bull that it appeared frailer than the previous one, and as it was present, it could remain. At one time, Chen's lineage launched an assault on the bulls and Stonebone, instructed Sam to concentrate on the formidable supervisor, alongside Stonebone. Aiding, Sam leaped onto the bull and attempted to gain mastery over it to be able to mount it. Chen observed. Sam possessed genuine skill in equestrianism, as his individuals labored to tame the flock. Chen instructed Lisa to depart, yet she declined, contending that the group had yet to disperse. Chen prevented her from participating in the battle, cautioning that she was ill-equipped to confront these beasts. He hadn't assembled a sufficient number of individuals, so rushing in would be tantamount to self-destruction. Lisa fell silent, unable to respond. Chen inquired once more why she wouldn't relocate her individuals to his location for the time being, where they could recuperate and bide their time for the opportune moment to reclaim their territory. He assured them refuge, sustenance, and safety. Ayu additionally encouraged Lisa to observe the well-being of her individuals. They were in no condition to battle. Did she genuinely desire to observe them squander their existence? Finally, Lisa instructed the Coconut Grove group to assist the injured and withdraw north to Chen's residence. Upon hearing that, a girl named Ayun became infuriated, yet she could not oppose the queen. She instructed the wounded to accompany Chen's followers. Chen subsequently assigned Ayu the responsibility of leading the Coconut Grove group. Ayu consented, and they departed. In the meantime, Stonebone and the rest continued to battle, and Ayun participated as well. Stonebone advised her to retreat if she felt frightened, having previously triumphed over the bulls and feeling no urgency to hasten. Ayun disregarded him and assaulted them, bulls regardless. Chen instructed Stonebone to allow her to be and concentrate on triumphing. He regarded those young women as courageous. The setting transitioned to dusk as everyone reconvened at Chen's encampment. A young woman named Maya from Chen's faction greeted them with joy, expressing her relief that everyone had returned safely. She inquired about Chen and the others, and Ayu clarified that they had remained behind to delay the enemy while the wounded were transported back. Maya stated that the young women from the coconut orchard could remain in the dwellings they had constructed. She exhaled in gratitude, reflecting that without Maya and the others persevering through their wounds to complete those homes, there would have been no place to accommodate them. Subsequently, Ayu informed Lisa that everyone had been accommodated, with provisions, lodging, and security guaranteed, thus alleviating her concerns. She encouraged Lisa to take a break for the time being, and Lisa softly expressed her gratitude. Ayu breathed out in relief as everything transpired seamlessly, and recalled Chen's remarks. He stated that the entire strategy was focused on managing the Coconut Grove faction at the minimal expense, as, following their most recent arduous confrontation, they were unable to sustain any further wounds. At this point, merely the concluding phase was left. The setting transitioned to the following day. When Maya inquired of He Jujiao if everything had proceeded without incident throughout the night, He Jujiao affirmed that he had kept watch all night long, and nothing occurred. Ayu was vigilantly positioned outside Lisa's residence when she abruptly sensed a shadow loom above her. She glanced up and noticed that Maya had approached. Ayu promptly inquired about her intentions. Maya declared that their monarch had summoned Lisa to his royal residence to deliberate on a matter of significance. The focus transitioned to Chen, who was assessing his system and experiencing upon Lisa's arrival to meet him. Lisa stated that Ayu had informed her about the unification of the clans, and her response was negative. She was unable to consent to it. Lisa cautioned Chen not to assume he could coerce her merely because the Coconut Grove faction was momentarily diminished. Chen responded that he wasn't compelling her. He was proposing an exchange. He could instruct her on constructing dwellings, forge arms, and ignite flames. Furthermore, in exchange, the Coconut Grove faction would unite with his community. He implored once more that she agree and stay safeguarded by him. Chen advanced, approached, and stated that bravery by itself was not invariably sufficient. He reminded her that she was more aware of the savagery of the Bay clan and the strength of the colossal Stone clan than he was. At that moment, he remarked, she resembled a wounded doe, and before long, ravenous predators would detect that scent of blood and begin their pursuit. Irritated, Lisa instructed him to cease. She was already aware of everything, yet it wasn't as straightforward. She clarified she was unable to compel the Coconut Grove girls to yield to his authority. Lisa inquired once again if Chen was genuinely prepared to embrace that challenge. Chen merely grinned and consented. As soon as they stepped outside, Chen spoke to the young women of the Coconut Grove faction. As their sovereign was injured and unable to engage in battle, he proclaimed that equity dictated he would abstain from combat as well. Instead, Chen asserted that Stonebone would fight on his behalf. Stonebone chuckled and inquired who would be bold enough to challenge him. Ayun immediately advanced and agreed. Stonebone smirked, cautioning her not to be overpowered by him. Ayun retorted that he ought to be wary of her avian armament. The contest commenced, and Ayun launched a skeletal blade at Stonebone. He chuckled initially, but then recognized that Chen was positioned directly behind him. If he evaded, Chen would be struck. Thus, Stonebone lifted his axe and parried the initial sword, but a second blade glided past and grazed his helmet. He wasn't severely injured, but it infuriated him. Stonebone lunged at Ayun with ferocious intensity. Ayun was almost inundated when a Coconut Grove maiden abruptly sprang from the throng and hurled another blade at Stonebone's headgear. Just then, Ayun knocked him to the ground. Stonebone shouted that he had been surprised and the confrontation was no longer equitable. Upon striking the earth, Ayun seized a blade and surged directly toward Chen. Chen didn't so much as blink. He had previously designated Huang Shu to protect him. Concealed upon the palace's pinnacle, Huang Shu cast a thrust at Ayun to protect Chen. The lance collided and propelled Ayun to the ground. Instantly, the Coconut Orchard girls darted over to Tina, yelling at Chen in rage. They alleged that he was deceiving them and enticing them into his domain with a tactic. Stonebone and Ayun both tightened as the confrontation intensified. The young women pleaded with Lisa for a command, asserting they could eliminate everyone present. Chen became anxious as well. An assassination was not included in his strategy, and he pondered whether the girls from the Coconut Grove were attempting to incite an all-out brawl. He He questioned if Lisa had commissioned it, or if she was completely unaware. Had the sovereign decreed it, he could potentially employ Lisa as a bargaining chip. However, to his astonishment, Lisa furiously commanded her associates to cease. She exclaimed, inquiring if they genuinely believed their trivial plot could deceive her. She asserted that she would never permit friends who had assisted them to be subjected to such disgraceful treatment. Lisa remarked that she would not probe into who participated in the assassination scheme, yet the duel remained a significant loss for them. She then informed Chen that Ayun was the most courageous and devoted fighter of the Coconut Grove clan. Without her, Ayun would have never relinquished her pride for something of this nature. Lisa remarked that she was aware Chen harbored exceptional talents, nearly supernatural ones. Thus, she inquired if he could be benevolent enough to save Tino's life. The Coconut Grove family would be eternally thankful. Chen appeared serious, yet internally he felt a sense of relief. This wasn't the most unfavorable result. Moreover, authority over the circumstances had been restored in his grasp. Recalling the blood-clotting salve, he reassured Lisa not to fret. Ayun wouldn't perish. After all, they had become partners now. One of the young women implored Chen to accelerate. Ayun was deteriorating rapidly. As he proceeded to assist, Chen resolved to disregard Tina's attempt on his life for the sake of a higher purpose. However, her deeds still couldn't escape retribution. Therefore, he utilized merely a small amount of medication, sufficient to sustain Ayun's life, but not to completely heal her, reserving the remainder of the salve for his own injuries. Upon attending to her, he instructed the others to transport Ayun back to her residence, assuring them that she would recuperate within a few days. Observing. The young women of the Coconut Grove tribe started lauding Chen, believing they had observed a phenomenon. Chen enveloped Lisa and inquired whether her community could unite with his clan at that moment. Radiating joy, she enthusiastically agreed. With a grin, Chen informed Lisa that she could continue guiding her team, provided they adhered to his directives. Lisa then stated she had one final plea. Chen required to become her companion, and they ought to conduct a ceremony to formalize it. Upon hearing that, Chen blushed with joy. To him, it seemed like a present bestowed upon him unexpectedly. He envisioned a marriage ceremony, band exchange, a nuptial suite, a daughter nurturing her collaboratively, observing her wed, aging together, and ultimately transitioning into the afterlife in unison. Witnessing Chen drawing, Lisa anxiously inquired about what was amiss. Did he not desire the partnership ceremony? Chen swiftly expressed his intense desire for it and enveloped her in a firm embrace. He then advised Lisa to recuperate and recover thoroughly, as he also required time to get ready for the ceremony. He instructed all to take a break as well, advising them to come back in a few days for the celebration. Following that, the system notified him that his clan had formally been founded and requested him to select a designation. Upon further inspection, Chen observed that the tribe's numbers totaled merely 46, and he pondered the reason for the deficit of 4. He designated it as the Newbie tribe. Subsequently, Chen began contemplating strategies for dealing with the Bei clan, even contemplating the possibility of seizing control, a few of their individuals captive. Nevertheless, he remained uncertain whether the prisoners would be included in the tribe's demographic. Then he caught snippets of conversation from a few girls from the Coconut Grove. They mentioned that they once appreciated Chen's grin, but now he would share the fate of the men who had previously become the queen's consorts, dissected during the ritual and subsequently consumed. Chen became rigid. The queen consumed men? He pondered whether that clarified why the Coconut Grove tribe had such a limited number of males. At that moment, an individual unexpectedly approached from behind him, causing him to cry out and plead with them not to harm him. Mia exposed herself and inquired why he appeared so terrified. Still taken aback, Chen questioned what she desired. Mia inquired whether he genuinely planned to become the partner of that impolite woman, Lisa. Chen acknowledged that he may have to reconsider it, as consenting to the celebration had been overly rushed. Mia inquired if he truly intended that. Chen responded that he had assumed he was acquiring a spouse. However, Lisa proved to resemble a praying mantis more than expected. Mia began to rejoice until IU interrupted. and inquired about why she had slipped away when she was meant to be recuperating. Flushing with embarrassment, Mia expressed her desire to be with Chen. He regretfully responded that he required solitude, and proposed that the girls from the coconut grove assist with the camp's building if they were interested. Ayu concurred and began guiding Mia back. Nevertheless, Mia continued urging Chen to ponder thoroughly and select her over Lisa. Subsequently, Chen resolved to converse with Lisa regarding the entire situation. The following morning, Chen awoke to discover everyone preparing, surprisingly smoothly. Moreover, the Coconut Grove group was assisting in the construction of homes. He made his way toward the agricultural region where the transient encampment of the Coconut Grove Collective was established. Upon his arrival, Yu welcomed him and inquired whether he had come to visit the queen. Consequently, she mentioned that Lisa was close to the river. Yu subsequently notified Lisa that the monarch had arrived, and Lisa instructed everyone else to exit. Once. They were isolated, and Lisa inquired if anything pressing had occurred. Chen declined. He had merely arrived to assess the progress of her injury. Lisa responded that she would be completely healed in an additional 2 or 3 days. Subsequently, Lisa inquired whether Chen was interested in embarking on their romantic journey ahead of time. Anxious, Chen replied negatively, then inquired about her name. Lisa informed him that he could address her as Lisa. That was the moniker the previous queen had bestowed upon her, yet no one had referred to her by it since her banishment. Upon hearing that, Chen became increasingly apprehensive, contemplating that it was either compliance or exile, and she might as well rebrand the faction as the Praying Mantis clan. Chen inquired if the previous monarch had companions as well, and what became of them. Lisa responded that all of them had been devoured. In her tribe, monarchs customarily ingested their consorts to acquire additional strength. Chen was even more concerned, but eased somewhat when Lisa mentioned that it was the previous queen's tradition, and she had no desire to uphold it. Chen experienced a sense of relief and inquired whether she had ever consumed anyone. Lisa replied that she had only just ascended to the throne and had never had a companion, thus she had never encountered the opportunity. Chen then bid farewell and departed to get ready for the event. On his journey back, he contemplated that, if the danger of being devoured was non-existent, perhaps he should engage in conversation with Mia. Abruptly, Lisa interjected that while she refrained from consuming humans, if someone mistreated her later, she would not falter to chastise them harshly. After a while, Chen traversed their communal space, observing everyone as they toiled. Then he came to the awareness that he had merely a week remaining to complete the objective, prompting him to prioritize the apprehension of captives and ensure its success. Chen informed Stonebone that he would be absent for a period. Throughout that. At that moment, Stonebone was tasked with coordinating everyone's tasks, and if any pressing matters arose, dispatch someone to locate Chen at the shore to the southward. The setting subsequently transitioned to the South Sea shore, where Chen witnessed something astonishing and pondered what had transpired. Had the Bay Clan been eradicated? Dodo birds roamed unrestrained among the remains, prompting Chen to understand that the vicinity was secure for the time being. He examined the Bay Clan cadavers and observed they retained a degree of suppleness, accompanied by no odor of decomposition. The conflict that resulted in their demise must have concluded quite recently. Chen also noticed that their digit talons were exceptionally pointed, and the injuries corresponded with those talons. He started to contemplate whether the aquatic zealots had turned against one another. This heightened the urgency of locating any remaining survivors. There, he discovered a cadaver devoid of internal wounds, yet its visage contorted in torment, as if it had perished in great suffering. As Chen endeavored to comprehend the circumstances surrounding the event, Sam unexpectedly emerged from nowhere, proclaiming that a faction of Bay Clan individuals was instigating disorder at their location. Upon hearing that, Chen swiftly dashed back to the headquarters. The setting transitioned to the headquarters, where Stonebone instructed everyone to remain nearby, preserve their energy, and prepare for hand-to-hand confrontation. They launched wooden javelins, yet the Bay Clan madmen dismissed them without a wound. As the madmen advanced, Stonebone instructed everyone to remain composed and resist in any way possible. Simply ensure that no one gets pulled into the water. Once that occurred, they would have no hope. The madmen charged at them, but a deluge of rocks disrupted their advance. At that moment, Queen Lisa's backup made its appearance. Lisa inquired of Stonebone about the situation. Were these adversaries from the Bay Clan? And what had prompted individuals from the southern border to unexpectedly arrive at their headquarters? Stonebone claimed he was completely unaware. The crazed individuals had abruptly emerged from South River and assaulted the base with wild fervor. Subsequently, the opposing factions clashed in a fierce confrontation. Lisa herself participated in the conflict alongside the Newbie clan. She attempted to converse with the Bay Clan warriors, but received no reply. This made her recognize that something was seriously amiss with them. As Lisa exchanged strikes with one assailant, a bulkier maniac attempted to catch her off guard. Chen charged in with great intensity, delivering a powerful blow to the hulking figure. Nevertheless, the madman absorbed the blow effortlessly, astonishing him. Subsequently, 2 members of the Bay Clan attempted to ambush Chen. However, Huang Shui and Lang Gekui intervened, defeating them and rendering them unconscious. If the Bay Clan desired their monarch, they cautioned, they would need to overcome them initially. Chen commended Huang Shui and Lang Gekui and instructed them to manage those lesser oddities. He additionally requested Lisa to assist his team in managing them, as he required his complete focus on the creature before him, her. Lisa consented and hurried inside. Chen informed everyone that he was depending on them until the outcome of his own battle was determined. He informed the large madman that he was completely unaware of what had transpired with the Bay Clan. However, the Newbie clan was not involved in the matter. They were likely assaulting an incorrect objective. The savage disregarded him and launched an assault regardless. Chen stiffened, yelling, inquiring if it had forfeited the capacity for speech. He was also astonished by the man's frenzied might and pondered how, even with strength and swiftness several times greater than that of an ordinary individual, he was meant to manage this situation. In the face of these crazed individuals, he felt like a delicate purveyor of destruction. Surrounded by his comrades, he could not afford to utilize his axe's concealed ability. Engrossed in contemplation, Chen overlooked the cadence of the madman's onslaught, and it seized his hand with its jaws. Fortunately, he pulled back just in time, since the bull monarch's mantle absorbed the impact. In the absence of that safeguard, his left hand could have been entirely severed. The maniac became increasingly furious and rushed at Chen once more with full force. Chen narrowly evaded, and the savage ripped away his mantle instead. Chen felt a chill. How had it escalated so quickly? If he hadn't managed to extricate himself from the shroud, he would be lifeless. Then he observed the maniac abruptly halt its assault and pondered what had caused its sudden stillness. An instant later, it withdrew. Chen perceived something unusual. The large madman had merely ripped away the blood-soaked section of his mantle. He also observed that Agun was the sole individual encircled by a substantial group of Bay Clan members. It was at that moment that Chen comprehended the Bay Clan was pursuing their targets through the scent of blood. In this distorted condition, they were operating solely on primal instincts, and Chen promptly contemplated exploiting that to his advantage. At that moment, Sam returned and inquired of Chen what he required. Chen instructed him to accompany 2 individuals and retrieve 3 piglets from the pig pen. Sam gazed at him, perplexed, reminding him that those wild pigs were designated for future utilization. Chen barked at Sam to simply carry it out, quietly seething that the Bay Clan was compelling him to relinquish 3 precious boars, and he would make amends for that in due time. He subsequently instructed Lisa to remove all the injured from the battle. Before long, Sam arrived back with the wild pigs. Chen instructed him to set the cubs free near the riverbank. The moment they were released, the terrified wild pigs raced toward the water in search of refuge. However, Huang Shu awaited with lances and assaulted the young ones. The moment they were injured, all the madmen of the Bay Clan shifted their gaze toward them and commenced tearing them asunder. As the madmen indulged in the young bears, Chen instructed everyone to apply a paralysis toxin to their spear tips and steer clear of critical areas. Then, to his astonishment, Huang Shu remarked that the Bay Clan lunatics were behaving oddly once more. As Chen glanced over, he was shocked to behold the crazed individuals, convulsing strangely before gradually crumpling to the earth. Chen furiously insisted on learning whether Sam had tainted the cubs, yet Sam refuted the accusation. That merely heightened Chen's vigilance, prompting him to instruct everyone to maintain their distance and remain cautious. He was unable to comprehend what was transpiring with the Bay Clan, or the reasons behind this situation. Eventually, the setting transitioned to the agricultural region, where each member of the Bay Clan was confined within enclosures. Ayun instructed everyone to remain vigilant in the event that any of them stirred. Upon awakening, the Bay Clan prisoners promptly began pleading for assistance. Ayun dispatched a young woman to notify King Chen. Meanwhile, Chen showed up and inquired about the situation. He discovered each Bei clan member fervently pleading for water. Chen initially inquired of Ayun regarding the whereabouts of Hector, the chief of the Bei clan. She replied that Hector had been separated from the rest. Upon Chen's arrival at Hector's enclosure, Hector was likewise pleading for hydration. Thus, Chen sprinkled some from a bottle onto him. He then inquired of Hector if he was able to comprehend him, to which Hector replied affirmatively. Chen subsequently passed the inquiry to Ayu. Ayu provided Hector with water to drink and instructed him to consume as much as he desired. Hector mentioned that his community required water as well, and requested Chen to distribute it among them. Ayu guaranteed him that everybody would receive a portion, then inquired if he was prepared to respond to several questions. Hector anxiously insisted on knowing why their tribe had been assaulted merely for that. He remarked that he had heard the giant stone clan was peculiar, but he never anticipated they would be this unusual. Ayu inquired whether he was asserting that the giant stone clan had assaulted them. Hector appeared stunned and remarked that Tor had never informed him that Chen's lineage did not belong to the giant stone clan. Ayu clarified that they were the newly established Nubi tribe, with Chen as their monarch. Hector remarked that he had never encountered any Nubi clan. Hence, the giant stone clan must have propelled them a considerable distance away. Ayu informed him that he was in error once more. Hector had been apprehended as a result of his assault on their territory, and the Nubi clan had never engaged with the giant stone clan. It was the Bei clan that surged in like frenzied animals. Hector was unwilling to accept this reality, stating that he recollected none of what Ayu was detailing. Therefore, Ayu requested him to share whatever he could recall. Hector mentioned that his tribe had been residing near the southern fish, spending their hours engaged in their customary squabbles and amusements. Then, unexpectedly, one of the youngsters rushed over to him in tears, claiming that someone had absconded with his dodo bird. Hector encouraged the child to be courageous and defend his possessions, assuming that Scaly and the others were the culprits. However, the child clarified that it had been taken by those peculiar individuals. As Hector glanced over, he spotted individuals from the Colossal Rock clan. Enraged, he insisted on understanding why they had intruded upon his domain. The Colossal Rock chief remained silent, only instructing his followers to assault the Bei clan. Hector was astonished by the unexpected assault and was perplexed about the reason behind it. He stated that he was rendered unconscious during the altercation, and upon regaining consciousness, he found himself already imprisoned by the Nubi clan. Chen subsequently informed Hector that he had been to their village previously, and no one remained there to draw breath. Had they not shown mercy to the remaining Bei clan individuals, the Bei clan would have vanished by. At that moment, Hector was devastated, engulfed by the anguish of not being able to rescue his kin. Abruptly, an object fell from Hector's form. Ayu retrieved. He lifted it and instructed Chen to observe. When Chen analyzed the foliage via the apparatus, he recognized it as industrial hemp, a plant recognized for alleviating discomfort and inducing visions when inhaled. The revelation unsettled Chen, leading him to ponder whether the giant stone clan was responsible. Subsequently, all were occupied, providing water to the Bei clan prisoners. In the meantime, Chen collected foliage from each member of the Bei clan and observed the identical, peculiar hint on all of them. He recalled Sam mentioning that the leader of the giant stone clan had acquired a certain form of celestial influence. Presently, it appeared less divine and more sinister. Chen speculated that the industrial hemp had probably incited the Bei clan to turn against one another. He also surmised that the giant stone clan orchestrated this, as the Bei clan's frenzied assault on Nubi tribe lands seemed far too calculated to be coincidental. If the Colossal Rock tribe had intentionally dispatched the Bei tribe to cause chaos and meet their demise, at that point the Nubi clan had already been observed and identified as a danger. Even Hector, despite his immense power, had been diminished to a mere marionette for another, demonstrating that the giant stone clan posed a considerable threat. Chen reviewed his statistics and realized that 3 points of power might prove insufficient. He required an upgrade prior to the genuine danger's emergence. Ayu arrived and cautioned that Hector was on the verge of a psychological breakdown. Should that occur, they might receive no further responses. Chen remarked that they lacked the time to wait for Hector's recuperation. Peril could emerge at any instant. Ayu inquired whether he intended to imply that the giant stone clan was preparing to assault their stronghold. Chen remarked that it was difficult to articulate, Yet he was convinced that the Giant Stone clan had utilized industrial hemp foliage to dominate the Bay clan. He emphasized that no one was aware of what lay ahead, so they needed to prompt Hector's recollection swiftly and gather additional details. Chen urged Stonebone to cease his self-reproach. When an individual inhales the hazardous fumes from industrial hemp foliage, mere fortitude becomes inconsequential. Subsequently, Chen raised the leaf and requested Hector to observe it. As soon as Hector beheld it, he remarked that the aroma seemed known to him. He faintly recalled detecting that aroma while battling those scoundrels. However, at that time, it was concealed beneath a multitude of other scents. He only recognized it as pungent and repulsive. That caused Chen to feel anxious. He inquired whether the Giant Stone clan could be utilizing various toxic vegetation. He concluded that they needed to understand the properties of each herb prior to strategizing any retaliation. Hector inquired whether King Chen planned to pursue the Giant Stone clan, mentioning that the Bay clan was also interested in participating. If he were unable to retaliate for his kin, he claimed he would lament it for the remainder of his existence. The remaining survivors of the Bay clan cried out that they too sought retribution, and were prepared to do anything necessary to obtain it. Chen believed that although he required additional individuals for the primary mission, they were merely 4 members short at this point. His musings were abruptly interrupted when Hector remarked that their noses were remarkably keen. They had the ability to detect and follow those harmful plants, which would greatly assist Chen. Chen expressed that this was precisely what concerned him. Their acute instincts could locate herbs, indeed, but their heightened awareness of blood indicated that if the Bay clan lost their grip once more, the result would be catastrophic. Hector exclaimed that in the absence of that toxic vapor, they could manage their behavior with ease. Chen acknowledged that the true adversary was the Giant Stone clan, then inquired about their course of action should that smoke be unleashed once more during combat. Hector responded with a heavy heart that if it reached that point, they would decline to engage in combat. Chen expressed that he comprehended the desire for retribution, yet fury and animosity by themselves would not resolve the situation. He also cautioned that Tor may not endorse whatever strategy Hector envisioned. Hector responded that they were the final remnants of the Bay clan. If Chen could assist them in avenging their kin, then their existence belonged to him. Chen informed Hector that, should he become a member of the tribe and pledge allegiance to the Novice clan, consequently, Chen would ensure retribution. However, he emphasized one point. Not every member of the Bay clan would be permitted to participate directly. Subsequently, Chen inquired of Hector once more regarding his opinion on the agreement. Hector and the remainder of the Bay clan promptly exclaimed their approval. As Chen began to depart, Hector shouted after him. Chen comprehended it immediately and instructed Aiyu and Aiyun to liberate the Bay clan from their enclosures. They were now partners. As soon as he accomplished this, the system proclaimed that the tribal quest was fulfilled. Chen received 3 attribute points, an abundant resource chest, and a legacy tablet. Since he completed it within 7 days, he also obtained a bonus gift package. Chen ultimately unwound. The journey was completed at long last and resolved to allocate all 3 attribute points into power. Once the scores were allocated, an immense surge of energy coursed through him. He sensed vitality surging within his physique. Once it stabilized, he realized his hair had elongated, and pondered whether that was a consequence of the enhancement. Therefore, Chen proceeded to examine the accolades. Within the expansive storage chest, he discovered a metric ton of hematite. That exhilarated him. It signified he could bypass the Bronze Age and transition directly into the Iron Age. Subsequently, Chen unwrapped the unexpected present with anticipation for something delightful. He was thrilled to discover 3 containers of clotting salve. In comparison to the previous occasion, this prize was significantly superior. Subsequently, Chen instructed the system to retrieve the heritage plaque. He realized he had acquired a civilization artifact, although gaining access to it would require 10 technology points. He did not waver, and utilized the points to recognize it. The recognition concluded, and Chen was awarded a tablet titled Sense of Humility. He promptly recognized that it could serve as a crucial advancement for the development of their society. He was particularly satisfied because it signified he no longer needed to concern himself with men and women swimming together. He certainly didn't want anyone observing Lisa in the water. With that resolved, Chen redirected his attention to the more significant issue: how to confront the colossal Stone clan. At that moment, Aiyu appeared. She was astonished by Chen's transformed physique, taller, wider, and more robust. Chen dismissed it casually and inquired what she required. In response, Ayu inquired if he wished for her to engage in discussions with the colossal stone tribe to resolve any misconceptions. Chen replied that there was no misconception. The colossal stone tribe had already resolved to obliterate them. He referred to them as the most formidable adversary the inexperienced clan had encountered thus far, the type capable of turning individuals against one another and thriving amid the turmoil. Ayu questioned anxiously what actions their clan ought to take next, unable to conceal her trepidation. Chen expressed that their most prudent course of action at present was to bolster defenses, stockpile provisions, and refrain from inciting the colossal stone tribe until they were completely prepared. In summary, they needed to conceal their power and bide their time for the opportune moment. Ayu subsequently inquired how they ought to arrange the 22 fresh arrivals. Chen instructed her to divide the Bei clan members into 3 groups, one for constructing shelters, another for collecting provisions, and a third for crafting traps. Upon hearing the word traps, Ayu appeared puzzled and inquired about their purpose. Chen clarified succinctly that snares would aid in safeguarding their domain. He remarked that they could apprehend adversaries or ferocious creatures alive, thereby providing the tribe with enhanced protection. Subsequently, he informed Ayu that he had an additional pressing assignment for her. Given the increasing number of individuals to nourish, they needed to begin contemplating sustainable food resources, and they could no longer afford to squander surplus meat. Thus, he resolved that everyone ought to acquire the skill of crafting jerky. When Stonebone arrived and gazed at Chen's more robust physique in astonishment, Chen instructed him to disregard that and concentrate on the objective at hand. He commanded Stonebone to begin establishing snares across the adjacent mountains, and the thicker, the superior. Chen mentioned that he had already selected assistants for him and would personally instruct on the initial snare. However, he emphasized that the true essential wasn't merely acquiring the skills to construct them. It was committing to memory the location of each trap. Upon hearing that, Stonebone grew tense and conceded that the task didn't seem thrilling in the slightest. Chen gently struck his helmet and expressed confidence that he would recall each trap's position, highlighting his significance. This had to remain entirely confidential. Only Chen and Stonebone would possess all the details, and no additional individual could be included. He instructed Stonebone to alternate employees among various sections to ensure that no individual became familiar with all the trap positions in any particular region. Should there be even a single betrayer among them, the repercussions would be catastrophic. Once the snares were established, Chen asserted that Stonebone needed to relay each position back to him. He even erased the diagrams he had utilized to clarify concepts, cautioning Stonebone against sketching anything. Every trap position needed to remain in his memory. Stonebone acknowledged that it appeared challenging, yet assured he would honor Chen's confidence. Chen commended him, then advised him to take a break. They would commence the task once nightfall arrived. Chen positioned the humility sign outside his residence so that all who walked by could observe it and comprehend its significance. Subsequently, he informed Leng Guchui that he intended to rest for a short period. Stonebone and the others would seek him out in the evening. Should any pressing matter arise prior to that, Leng Guchui was to rouse him without delay. Within the dwelling, Chen reclined on the mattress, contemplating the extent of time they truly possessed. There remained an immense amount to accomplish. Recruit troops into various divisions, construct fortifications, coordinate patrols, unveil advanced technology, broaden territory. To Chen, the tasks seemed perpetual. Nevertheless, he chose to savor this uncommon opportunity to relax and swiftly drifted off to sleep. Upon Chen's awakening, he discovered himself in an establishment enveloped by attractive women indulging in beverages. Chen requested that they present themselves. They introduced themselves as Xiaoya, Lily, and Tita Dan. Overjoyed, Chen remarked that he must have indulged a bit too much. Yet he was pleased to return, no longer stuck in those nerve-wracking days of surviving in the wild. He relished their companionship, and after some time Xiao Yu was reclining next to him, informing him that it was time to rise and attend to work. Chen sighed, expressing that he truly couldn't manage it any longer. Xiao Yu, then, stated she was not Xiao Yu. He speculated a few alternative names, yet all were incorrect. Finally, she declared that she was Stonebone. Chen sprang up in terror and exclaimed, It had all been a vision. Enraged, he insisted on understanding why Stonebone was present in his chamber. Stonebone replied that Chen had instructed him to visit during the night. However, upon his arrival, Chen seized him and began to court him. Chen was utterly astonished. Then Lungu Chui interjected, stating that it was merely a misconception, and they had to commence their tasks. Eventually, the focus transitioned to Chen, instructing the group on constructing traps, beginning with a spike pit as the initial demonstration. He clarified that their adversaries and the creatures they encountered were immense. Thus, the traps needed to be sufficiently deep and broad to be effective. Subsequently, Chen demonstrated the correct method to cover the cavities with foliage. He urged them to consider that spike pits could be combined with the tripwire snares he instructed them on previously, emphasizing the significance of diversifying trap varieties. He mentioned that Huang Shui could likewise instruct on various trap designs. Huang Shui appeared perplexed and stated that he was unaware of any traps whatsoever. Chen inquired whether he recalled the shifting target from javelin practice, exchanged the timber for a net, and incorporated a mechanism, transforming it into a snare. Following this, Chen delegated the task to Stonebone and the others before returning, silently wishing he could reclaim the aspiration he had just forfeited. Upon returning to the area, Chen was astonished to discover it deserted. Typically, at this time, someone would have been awake and industriously engaged in their tasks. He proceeded to inspect the residences, but when he attempted, as the girl entered the room, the women present instantly shouted for the intruder to remain outside. When Chen inquired about the situation, their tones became grave. A few were only partially attired, thus none of them wished to step outside. This led Chen to believe that the heritage plaque's humility was influencing them. He closed the door and informed them they had half a day to create new garments. If they remained inside past noon, he cautioned that he would implement the regulations without compassion. Positioned beside the memorial, Chen was captivated by the intensity of its impact. Subsequently, Stonebone dashed over, calling out his name. As Chen pivoted, Stonebone enthusiastically remarked that they had discovered something during their excavation of traps. Chen immediately beamed. What Stonebone uncovered was flint, a remarkable find. He elucidated that flint unveiled boundless opportunities, particularly as striking it forcefully could generate sparks. Chen and Stonebone swiftly returned to the location where it had been discovered. Once. There, Stonebone indicated the location and mentioned they had excavated around that boulder. Following, with a single glance, Chen understood that there was little flint present. Given that this was not a parched, salty desert, if the flint had originated naturally, there was merely one plausible rationale. He instructed Stonebone to examine the earth more meticulously. Stonebone concurred, remarking that the section of soil was gentler than the surrounding ground, and it appeared that there were objects concealed within that resembled nothing like ordinary stones. Upon sampling it, Stonebone immediately overwhelmed with dread. It was excrement, and he sensed ill after placing it in his mouth. Chen, on the other hand, had already surmised that there was likely a substantial waste pit beneath. He was perplexed. Had another rudimentary civilization once inhabited this area and advanced to a point where they utilized something akin to restrooms? Or could this have been the ancient lair of the colossal rock tribes? Chen instructed Stonebone to collect the flint, then conceal everything once more and leave no evidence behind. He additionally commanded the installation of additional traps in the vicinity, the construction of signaling towers on elevated terrain, and the assignment of sentinels to rotate through shifts. Stonebone merely gazed, then exclaimed in bewilderment. Structures? Lighthouses? What was Chen referring to? The setting transitioned forward by 4 days. Chen wandered through the area, observing the numerous new residences. For him, this was the initial genuine stride towards contentment. Abruptly, Mia dashed towards him, nearly startling him out of his wits. He urgently summoned Lungu Chui for assistance in restraining her, but it was beyond the point of no return. Mia propelled herself into Chen with an overwhelming embrace, and unintentionally overwhelmed. A residence under construction. Lungu Chui anxiously inquired whether Chen was okay and instructed Mia to remove herself from him immediately. Noticing Chen in pain, Mia embraced him more firmly, pleading with him not to perish. They had only recently completed constructing the homes and couldn't afford to lose him at this moment. Chen sighed that the playful antics had come to an end, then inquired if Mia had mentioned that the homes were completed. She acquiesced and proudly conveyed that there were 2 lines of residences, totaling 10, sufficient to accommodate 50 individuals comfortably. Satisfied, Chen gently smoothed her hair and commended her efforts. Subsequently, he informed Mia to refrain from behaving so irresponsibly again, and penalized her by requiring her to mend the damaged house. Subsequently, he proceeded to examine their provisions. Upon arriving at the river shore, Chen observed the Bei family joyfully angling, while you, and a number of girls assisted in spreading the catch out to dry. Chen observed that, in contrast to constructing homes or excavating pits, the Bei clan was significantly more adept at entering the river and catching fish. With their assistance, the newly formed tribe had evidently acquired not only an increased quantity of sustenance, but also a greater diversity. Lung. Guchui commended Chen for their numerous achievements, noting that it had bestowed upon them a remarkably flourishing existence. Chen replied, "Perhaps that is true," yet he continued to contemplate whether the manner in which he overcame the Coconut Grove faction was genuinely just, and what strategies he could employ in the future. Lung Guchui advised him against doubting himself. Chen's directives represented their intent, and in his perspective, there was no flaw in their actions. In this realm, he remarked, solely the robust endure. Clans large and diminutive annihilate each other daily. Thus, achieving victory with minimal casualties was a form of compassion for both them and the Coconut Grove faction. Chen grinned and remarked that Lung Guchui possessed the essential attributes required for the journey ahead. Subsequently, Chen requested him to evaluate the frontier fortifications. Persuaded that the Bei clan could still possess additional unexpected developments, reminiscent of that enigmatic amphibious unit, the setting transitioned to Stone Bone and the others constructing snares and fortifications. Upon Chen's arrival, he inquired of Stone Bone regarding the configuration of the traps and signal towers. Stone Bone stated that in accordance with Chen's directives, the western, southern, and northern signal towers were all completed. However, after designating 6 individuals to staff the towers in shifts, they were left with very few employees remaining. Stone Bone clarified that to complete on time, they needed to depart early and labor on the mountain prior to nightfall. Chen recognized the deficiency in personnel and resolved that from this day forward, he and Leng Guchu would venture into the mountains to lend assistance. Stonebone objected, asserting that they were capable of handling it alone. However, Chen interrupted him. This was a pivotal instant, thus each moment was crucial. He continually pondered if the colossal rock tribe had previously resided in the vicinity. If that were the case, they could possess a deeper understanding of this landscape than his own kin, and if they launched their assault while his clan was still ill-equipped, the subsequent ambush could be even more significant. That evening, as all were laboring, and Chen toiled beside them, abruptly cast a look at the western lighthouse and sensed an ominous foreboding. He pondered whether it was merely his creativity. Suddenly, shrieks erupted from the southern beacon tower. Astonished, Chen spun around and gazed in that direction, where he noticed the distress signal. Chen yelled for everyone to advance. The southern lighthouse was being assaulted. Chen dashed towards the south, his thoughts speeding. Despite being aware of every snare position and benefiting from an agility enhancement of 2 points, it still required a minimum of 5 minutes to arrive at the southern mountain. He could merely hope that nothing occurred during those 5 minutes. At the southern tower, Huang Shui was conducting a surveillance when he observed that snares adjacent to the community had been activated. He was unable to comprehend how adversaries had infiltrated so deeply. He also contemplated that an additional faction could have noticed the signal blaze and was advancing stealthily amidst the turmoil. Concluding, it was preferable to initiate action first. He set out to locate the trespasser. Huang Shui hurried towards the noise and thrust his spear. However, the adversary was formidable, deflecting the spear and compelling him to evade. To his astonishment, the silhouette immediately launched into an assault, departing. Huang Shui had hardly any opportunity to respond, and causing him to elevate his defenses in alarm. To his astonishment, the assailant halted and identified himself as Chen. Shocked, Huang Shui inquired why he was on the southern flank. Chen replied that there was insufficient time to clarify, and questioned whether Huang Shui was aware of where the snares had been triggered. Huang affirmed and indicated the location, adding that he was the individual who ignited the signal fire. Chen instructed him to bide his time for the others who were following the secure path, and then guide them to that location after himself. Upon Chen arriving at the activated snares, he was unable to detect anyone else in the vicinity. The stillness felt unsettling. It was evident that they had not captured a wild creature. And because the confined individual wasn't shouting for assistance, Chen contemplated whether they were truly alone or had already lost consciousness. As he gazed into the snare, he was astonished to discover Lisa. He insisted on understanding what she was doing there when. She was meant to be recuperating from her wounds, Lisa retorted, questioning why he was positioned there questioning her, rather than providing assistance. Chen simply smiled and playfully provoked her by tickling her feet, until Lisa, infuriated, demanded that he take her away. At that moment, they perceived Huang Shui and the others approaching. Lisa whispered sharply to Chen that if anyone witnessed her in this state, he had better ensure they remained silent. Chen tightened and instructed her to hold on as he dealt with them. He bellowed for all to halt in their tracks and refrain from advancing any further. This was perilous, and they risked death if they drew near. Stonebone appeared perplexed and speculated whether Chen had inadvertently walked into a trap. Should they charge in and rescue him? Huang suggested likely not. Based on Chen's inflection, he didn't appear to be in a predicament. Rather, it seemed he preferred they not witness something. Stonebone whispered that Chen had appeared odd since the confrontation. Even the women steered clear of them during bathing, and everything seemed altered in some way, although he was unable to clarify it. In the meantime, Chen liberated Lisa and chuckled, remarking that he had never anticipated her, of all individuals, to succumb to the snare, but at least they were now aware that it was effective. Lisa chuckled as well, remarking that she hadn't anticipated him being aware of such an array of peculiar skills. Chen subsequently inquired what had prompted her to venture out here during the late hours, to which Lisa responded that she had eavesdropped on the Bay tribe's conversation that evening. She clarified that a pair of individuals from the Bay clan were expressing a desire to visit the coast for seafood such as fish, shrimp, or clams to gain more vigor for their labor. However, the route to the coast was obstructed by a menacing group of hyenas, deterring anyone from proceeding due to the threat of an assault. Returning to the current moment, Lisa remarked that this was the reason she ventured out after dark, in search of a more secure pathway. Chen stated he had traversed that path numerous occasions, and there had been no hyenas present 5 days prior. He surmised that an individual from the Bay clan had recently ventured out and lured the pack into the vicinity. Lisa inquired whether there was an issue with the Bay clan and proposed taking drastic action against them. Chen promptly rejected the idea. He also emphasized that they needed to remove obstacles from the pathway to the beach and ensure its safety. Chen mentioned that fish and shrimp were merely an extra benefit. The main focuses were dodo birds and their eggs. He also proposed establishing a salt flat for evaporating salt. Subsequently, he resolved the matter. At dawn, they would confront the hyenas. Lisa mentioned that she could manage the sentinels and concealed guards. Nevertheless, she encouraged Chen to reconsider pursuing the hyenas and expanding their domain further. Chen grinned and inquired whether she was apprehensive about him. Agitated, Lisa instructed him not to surpass her. She also cautioned him that the shoreline had previously been struck by the colossal stone tribe. What if they returned? Chen responded that this was precisely the reason the shoreline was comparatively secure at present. He clarified that their primary encampment, the coastal station, and the massive stone tribe on the southwestern mountain established a triangular formation. If supplies and communications flowed seamlessly between the camp and the shoreline, both factions could bolster one another. Lisa confessed that she didn't quite comprehend his logic, but since he had made a decision, she concurred. After a while, Chen, Hector, Leng Guchui, and a few members of the Bay clan made their way to the location where the child had seen the hyenas. Hector inquired of the youngster whether he was certain this was the correct route. There was no trace of blood. The child maintained he had witnessed the hyenas in that location roughly 2 days prior. While the young lad advanced, a hyena abruptly sprang towards him. Hector responded immediately, countering and rescuing the child from peril. However, nearly immediately, hyenas surrounded them from all sides. Leng Guchui cautioned Chen to remain vigilant. Chen merely grinned, remarking that, with the Bay clan at their side, a horde of feral dogs posed no threat. Then, Hector instructed Chen to lead the team on the left while he managed the correct. The brawl erupted, and the Bay faction swiftly engaged the hyenas without difficulty. Chen believed it was the ideal opportunity to assess the true potential of the new trainees. A hyena abruptly lunged at Chen. He effortlessly halted its advance, seizing it by the neck. In a matter of moments, they had eradicated the hyenas. Hector complained that the battle had not been fulfilling. Chen, instructed him to dismiss it, and urged everyone to continue onward. As they ventured further, Hector remarked that this once belonged to their domain. Upon their arrival, Chen urged everyone to examine the vat he stated was the location for the establishment of the outpost. He indicated it needed to be positioned close to the precipice and be spacious enough to accommodate 20 individuals, complete with a signal tower above it. Chen mentioned that once the structure was completed, they would also require a modest salt flat adjacent to the outpost. He informed Hector that he would dispatch additional assistants to help, yet emphasized that he had merely 4 days to complete all tasks. For an instant, Chen experienced the sensation of a supervisor evaluating a construction site, despite being the one burdened with the strenuous work. Prior to departing, Chen directed them to ignite a signal blaze without delay in the event of any crisis. The situation. Postponed to 3 days subsequently when Chen completed the construction of a wooden bow and acquired 5 technology credits. At that moment, IU arrived to inform everyone that Sam had come back with an update. Chen approached and inquired if Sam had discovered any northern clans to partner with or subjugate. Sam replied that he had journeyed north for over a day and encountered no signs of inhabitants. He stumbled upon a lake, an adjacent snow-covered peak, and an unusual being inhabiting the water. Prior to obtaining a distinct view, the being descended to the depths and disappeared. With the snow-capped peak positioned further ahead, Sam hesitated to proceed and retraced his steps. Chen dismissed it with a chuckle, commending him for his performance, then teased that Sam was more afraid of the icy peak than the aquatic creature. Trembling, Sam replied that the mountain was considerably more menacing. He inquired whether Chen had ever encountered the tales regarding it. Chen questioned what was so terrifying, but IU abruptly embraced him, expressing that she was frightened. Chen inquired why the snowy mountain intimidated her to such an extent. IU remarked that the mountain wasn't the most daunting aspect. It was what resided beyond it, a colossal being. Chen reassured IU not to fear. With his presence, she had no reason for apprehension. Suddenly, his system presented a new mission. Locate the giant, and he would earn 1 attribute point. Chen was astonished. Why would merely observing a colossal figure merit a single point? He had come perilously close to death while fleeing from a saber-toothed creature, and had only received 2 points for that. Then it dawned on him that the giant might merely be an exceptionally large individual. Watching from afar shouldn't pose much of a threat, correct? Conversely, if the giants possessed their own society, they might even become allies. Nevertheless, he needed to remain vigilant. A single misstep could spell catastrophe for the tribe. Nevertheless, exploration and negotiation were not responsibilities he could fully delegate to Sam and IU. Chen informed Sam to take a respite. The feast was in 2 days, allowing him to relax and indulge himself. Sam expressed his gratitude, evidently relieved that he was receiving a reprieve and would not need to confront the behemoth. IU reminded Chen that Sam tended to feel anxious in specific circumstances. Chen suggested it could be more than just anxiety. Sam perceived peril more acutely than anyone else, which rendered him exceptionally vigilant to specific risks. This was the reason he could wander outdoors and remain safe. Chen subsequently inquired with IU regarding the arrangements for the partnership ceremony. IU stated that all preparations were complete. Chen instructed her to assemble travel essentials for 4 individuals. He intended to lead a small party on an adventure. Upon learning that he would be participating personally, IU anxiously inquired whether the journey posed any risks. Stated he was merely surveying the surrounding regions, thus there was no cause for concern. He requested provisions, water containers, and warm garments, and instructed IU to express gratitude to Skinny for crafting the attire so excellently. IU subsequently inquired about his intended departure. Chen replied that the ceremony was scheduled for 2 days hence, so he would set off following the feast. The setting transitioned to 48 hours later, with Chen having crafted a shield for his own protection. He clarified that, constructed from durable timber and leather, it was exceedingly lightweight. He mentioned that all individuals ought to substitute their equipment as swiftly as feasible. At that moment, IU entered and informed Chen that it was time to don the regal attire. As he emerged wearing it, the crowd erupted in applause and commenced festivities. At that instant, Chen couldn't refrain from speculating whether the partner ceremony was essentially a nuptial event. In his previous existence, he had battled merely to endure, but now he possessed his own clan. his own community, along with a spouse. It seemed nearly like a fantasy. However, in this realm, he genuinely sensed his place. Chen approached Lisa and conveyed to her that should he ever be absent, the destiny of the novice clan would rest in her care. He then proclaimed to the entire clan that from that point forth, Lisa would reign as the sovereign of the novice tribe. The members enthusiastically applauded their monarch and sovereign, and the atmosphere became profoundly poignant. Even Mia wept, expressing her desire for no one to take the king's place. Yet the moment remained poignant. Once the festivities concluded and darkness descended, all attendees bid Chen farewell for the night, and Chen felt a sense of relief that the event had transpired without any mishaps. Ayu approached with a grin and informed him that Queen Lisa was anticipating him in the palace. He ought to make his way to her. Initially, Chen flushed at the idea of Lisa anticipating his arrival, but then grew tense, recalling that her preferred method of expressing fondness included a whip. Thus, he made his way toward the palace, intrigued by what could be in store for him. Summoning his courage, Chen unlatched the door and announced to Lisa that he had returned. However, the instant he glimpsed her fury-ridden expression and sensed the palpable strain, Chen became rigid, contemplating why it abruptly seemed as though someone was on the verge of perishing. Lisa informed him that she would grant him a single opportunity to justify his actions. Anxiously, Chen inquired about what precisely she desired him to elucidate. Lisa Rose retrieved the whip and inquired if he was still feigning. Now truly frightened, Chen pleaded with her to show restraint. It was their nuptial evening. Inwardly, he lamented his decision to enhance Lisa's ride. Lisa insisted on understanding why he was in such a rush to depart from her by embarking on a journey immediately following the ceremony. Upon hearing that, Chen eased slightly and urged her to compose herself so he could clarify. He outlined his entire strategy, and Lisa inquired whether he intended to convince the giants to ally with them against the Colossal Stone faction. Chen expressed uncertainty about his ability to persuade the giants and preferred to err on the side of caution. Thus, the true intention of the journey had to remain concealed. He likewise confessed that he couldn't comprehend why Sam and Ayu were so apprehensive about the giants. Lisa listened to that and inquired if it might be more advantageous for her to accompany him. Chen declined, stating that one of them needed to stay with the community, and furthermore, she had a more significant matter to address. Lisa inquired about what that was. Chen retrieved a stone slingshot and mentioned he would demonstrate its functionality to her later. He clarified that by the moment he came back, he required her to instruct a rock-throwing squad. The setting transitioned to the following morning, with Chen making his way into the giant's domain, accompanied by Huang Shu, Hector, and Tina. He was even humming to himself, but Ayu stared at him with intense anger. Noticing that, Chen became anxious and speculated whether Ayu was intentionally trailing behind him, merely biding her time for another opportunity to surprise him. However, there was nothing he could initiate. This had been Lisa's choice. The events of the previous night were straightforward. When Chen attempted to flirt with Lisa, she sharply rebuked him, telling him to cease his teasing. She then inquired as to the reason. If he required 3 associates, he had not selected individuals from the Coconut Grove tribe or the Bay tribe. Chen expressed his desire for Hector to accompany him, as he had witnessed his combat abilities firsthand. Regarding the coastal outpost, Stonebone would oversee it for the time being. Lisa expressed that she was indifferent to whom else he selected, but insisted that she needed to accompany him. She mentioned that her sense of security would only be guaranteed if Ayu remained alongside him. Lisa moved nearer and reassured Chen that she had already dealt with Ayu severely regarding the previous occurrence, so he had no need to be concerned. In the current moment, Chen remained tense. Ayu trailing behind him kept his temper boiling and his anxiety heightened. At this juncture, Chen grasped onto Huang Shu as if he were a crucial support, convinced that if anything were to occur, only Huang Shu could rescue him. Huang Shu whispered that it seemed as though someone was observing them, then dismissed it as likely just his fancy. Hector inquired of Chen whether he was aware that there was a lake ahead. Chen acknowledged, stating that Sam had brought it up previously. Hector chuckled and surmised that Sam must have spotted the colossal being as well, because during his childhood, he once observed it consume a leopard entirely in the blink of an eye. He mentioned that he had been fortunate to endure witnessing it as a youngster, and this time he aspired for an authentic confrontation with the lake creature. Chen was astonished. How could encountering a being like that be deemed fortunate? He conveyed to Hector that creatures such as a lake monster did not captivate him significantly. He would only find enthusiasm in something far more formidable, similar to titans. This caused Huang Shu to recoil, and he anxiously implored Chen not to desire such a thing. Chen mentioned that he was merely jesting, then inquired whether giants truly existed. Huang Shu commenced detailing that prior to their encounter with the monarch, their clan consisted of over 30 individuals. Then one day they encountered a colossal creature, leaving the entire tribe powerless. Everyone dispersed in a frenzy, filled with terror. Although he was quite young at the time, Huang Shu remarked that none of the survivors could ever erase that terrifying image from their memories. Now, Chen ultimately grasped the reason behind Sam and Ayu's shivers at the mere mention of giants. Hector interrupted and cautioned everyone against consuming the nearby fruit. He had tasted it in his youth and suffered greatly as a consequence. Chen examined the fruit with his apparatus and verified it originated from toxic vegetation. He surmised that the unfamiliar vegetation surrounding them could potentially be beneficial, so he instructed the system to examine and recognize them. The outcomes astonished him. Each individual plant possessed potent therapeutic properties. Chen was in awe. The whole woodland was essentially teeming with healing botanicals. He then observed something peculiarly recognizable, and upon inspecting it, he recognized it as a grain-bearing grass. Chen beamed immediately, delighted to have discovered grain seeds, and shortly acquired a supplementary mission: cultivate numerous varieties of cereals in substantial quantities and successfully nurture them within a period of 180 days. Chen instantly considered that they could be embarking on agriculture, and as soon as they discovered clay, they would be able to prepare food, create remedies, and much more. As the crop had not matured yet, he opted to come back later and collect it at that time. At that moment, Chen perceived an unusual occurrence. This time, it wasn't Tina's animosity. Huang Shou highlighted a particular aspect, and Chen pivoted abruptly, anticipating peril. Instead, he discovered a leaf with resilient strands, ideal for twine, fabric, or even parchment. He commended Huang Shou for noticing something so advantageous, already envisioning superior garments. However, Huang Shu specified that he was not referring to the peculiar vegetation. He was alluding to the sounds emanating from the thicket. As Chen glanced over, a hyena emerged from the undergrowth. He surmised that the pack had been shadowing them the entire time, and the eyes they had perceived earlier were likely those of these hyenas. Becoming aware that they could return for retribution, Chen instructed everyone not to allow their escape and encouraged them to eliminate the menace. The battle commenced. Hector stormed in wrathful, resolute to eliminate the hyenas once and for all. However, Ayun was unexpectedly encircled, with 2 or 3 hyenas darting towards her. Hector hurried over and rescued her effortlessly, advising her not to express gratitude. It was part of his duty. Subsequently, the hyenas began to retreat, and Hector chuckled that it was a shame they were escaping. Chen instantly 叫喊着让他们不要让猎狗逃跑，因为他厌倦了一次又一次的遭到伏击。他们开始追赶，然而Chen迅速understood that despite having 2 additional agility points, he could hardly match their velocity, making it impractical to keep pace. Suddenly, an unsettling stillness enveloped him. As he pivoted, he became petrified. Ayun had been captured by a mysterious plant creature. Chen pondered what it could be, and upon investigating, discovered it was a crimson king blossom, a large plant that exuded caustic slime and actively pursued nearby creatures for sustenance. Chen was astonished. It was a carnivorous bloom. First saber-toothed cats, then colossal beings, and now this. The prehistoric era was drifting further from anything he comprehended. Ayun attempted to pierce it with her skeletal blade. Yet, the weapon slipped from her grasp and fell into the flet, blossoms opening, where it melted instantly. The scene left everyone in shock. Chen shouted, insisting to understand why Huang Shu and Hector were merely standing by, and commanded them to rescue Tina. Huang Shu retorted that they were not declining to assist. They had also fallen prey to the beast. Chen promptly began to slash the plant's tendrils, yelling for Ayun to persevere until he arrived. Ayun exclaimed, urging Chen to abandon her, rescue Hector and Huang Shu instead, and flee. Prior to his arrival, the carnivorous plant engulfed her entirely. Fury surged within Chen, yet he compelled himself to concentrate on rescuing Hector and Huang Shu above all else. To his astonishment, hyenas launched an assault from the rear as well. Hector assisted by tossing an object at the hyenas to repel them, cautioning Chen to maintain his distance. It was a ruse set by Chen, the jackals. Huang also called for Chen to flee, asserting that he could still evade capture on his own while they delayed the group for as long as possible. Nonetheless, Chen continued to resist the tendrils, becoming aware that they were not particularly swift. The hyenas were merely taking advantage of the diversion. Subsequently, he observed that they were in proximity to an area of lifeless trees. Relying entirely on it, Chen extracted flint and struck it against the wood, igniting a fire. In his thoughts, no being was present that couldn't be resolved with an appropriate flame roasting. The tendrils ignited, and Chen succeeded in pulling Ah. Yoon emerged from the bloom's petals. The moment she appeared, he eagerly inquired if she was fine and able to continue moving. They still needed to rescue Huang Shu. Tina's gown had been torn asunder amidst the turmoil, prompting Chen to offer her his regal cloak for modesty. Once all were liberated, they hurried away. As they escaped, Chen continued hurling flint rocks at lifeless trunks, igniting additional ones. Flame, so they could avoid the anxiety of hyenas pursuing from the rear. Then Chen noticed water in the distance. He bellowed for all to continue and dive in. The water would safeguard. However, one hyena continued to pursue Ah Yun and was on the verge of leaping. Noticing the peril, Chen urged her to keep an eye on her rear and dashed over to rescue. It lunged at him, yet Chen succeeded in fending it off. Hector and Huang Shu were apprehensive, uncertain about how to assist. Chen yelled for everyone to continue running as the blaze was rapidly advancing. He assured them he would follow closely behind, although he was concerned he might not exhaust the creature before the fire overtook them. Suddenly, an arrow emerged from the shadows and struck the hyena, excelling in the moment. Chen glanced around to identify the shooter and was taken aback. It was Tina. He recognized that her archery skills had emerged, then inquired of Ayun whether she possessed the ability to wield a bow. Ayun remarked that she had acquired knowledge by observing him previously. She further mentioned that she had sprained her ankle and had minimal strength remaining, thus she couldn't flee on her own, and they ought to prioritize their own safety. Chen exclaimed that she was being ridiculous. He then lifted her onto his shoulders and sprinted. Hector shouted for Chen to hasten. Their moments were dwindling. He even inquired if Huang Shu wished to accelerate his pace by being lifted with his strength, but Huang Shu declined. While Chen continued to sprint, Ayun unexpectedly proclaimed her intention to seize this opportunity to blame him. Did he orchestrate the bull assault on the Coconut Grove faction? Chen inquired about her reasoning, and Ayun responded that she was aware he would refute it regardless. She remarked that the bulls that trespassed onto their territory had already sustained injuries, but their armaments were incapable of penetrating such robust hides. So who inflicted those wounds? Chen's community was remarkably skilled in managing bulls, which only intensified her doubts. Yet, she understood that mere doubt would not convince the monarch, so she opted for murder instead. Ayun applied her skeletal blade to Chen's throat and inquired if she were to strike at that moment. He wouldn't be able to prevent her, would he? Alternatively, he might simply cast her into the flames and resolve the issue for good. Chen merely instructed her to grip firmly. They were nearly at the brink, and afterward, she could proceed to do whatever she desired. Ayun consented to overlook it for the time being, but mentioned that she would continue to monitor him. She cautioned that should he ever deceive Lisa or the Coconut Grove faction, she would eliminate him. Chen inquired if that concluded the matter, then acquiesced to the conditions. Ayun became increasingly vexed that Chen remained so unyielding and continued to decline confessing. Finally, they jumped into the water and evaded the flames. It was only at that moment that Chen understood that with two hurt allies unable to maneuver effectively, they would need to postpone the quest for the behemoth. He instructed everyone to return to the location abundant with vegetation. They required additional supplies of those medicinal herbs. The setting transitioned to a later moment, when Huang Shu experienced immense relief after administering the medication and sensed the discomfort diminish. Chen instructed Huang Shu and Ayun to take a break while he and Hector collected additional supplies. Botanicals. As he gathered them, Hector abruptly detected the aroma of hyenas and pondered whether it had remained from the previous altercation. Subsequently, Chen noticed a group of juvenile hyenas in the distance and became aware. The group wasn't seeking vengeance. They were merely protecting their offspring and responding to a danger. Recognizing an opportunity to train them as hunting hounds, Chen eagerly embraced the challenge. As they were departing, a deafening roar abruptly reverberated in the vicinity. Ayun inquired about the source of that noise. However, Chen identified it immediately and grew tense. They couldn't possibly be this unfortunate. A bear emerged from behind the trees, and Huangshu screamed in fear that it was a flesh-devouring bear. Chen promptly assessed their alternatives. With 2 individuals injured, escaping was unfeasible. Thus, he commanded all to encircle and withdraw while he occupied the bear's attention. Hector and Ayun attempted to protest, but Chen snapped at them to comply with instructions and cease their dispute. Chen retorted that they would merely hinder his progress. They had a singular opportunity to survive, so they must adhere to his commands. He instructed Hector to ensure the safe extraction of Ayun and Huangshu. Subsequently, Chen advanced towards the bear as the others retreated. In a flash, he found himself confronting the creature. Chen initiated the attack. However, the bear retaliated, hurling him through the atmosphere and causing only minor injuries. Hector glimpsed it and promptly became frantic. He encouraged Huangshu and Ayun to return with the baby hyenas, while he proceeded to assist the monarch. Huangshu called out to Hector, urging him not to meddle. He had already witnessed the sheer magnitude of Chen's power. To him, no adversary, no matter how formidable, could surpass Chen, and remaining would merely hinder Chen's mobility. Thus, Huangshu persisted in urging them to adhere to Chen's directive and depart. In the meantime, Chen understood that the final strike had completely captured the bear's attention. His strategy at this point was straightforward: haul the creature away and then flee. He provoked the bear into pursuing him, and as soon as it pounced towards him, Chen dashed in the opposite direction from the others to ensure their safety. Once he had created some separation, he assessed that Hector and the others were sufficiently distant, prompting him to ready himself to elude the bear and make his escape. However, something assailed him from the rear. Chen barely evaded and pondered what was approaching him next. For a brief moment, he imagined it could be a colossal rodent creature. To his astonishment, however, it was the identical saber-toothed feline he had fought when he initially stepped into this realm. Even the big cat appeared astonished to encounter Chen once more. However, the gathering concluded swiftly when the bear arrived. At that moment, Chen found himself in genuine peril. He realized he was unable to manage both their strength and swiftness simultaneously, so he contemplated harnessing Pangu's might. However, he was also aware of the price. He would be debilitated for an extended period and could potentially lose consciousness for several days. Even more concerning, even if he managed to endure the tiger and bear, the colossal stone tribe could launch an assault while he was defenseless and eliminate him. While the bear and the sea, the saber-toothed feline advanced toward Chen, persistently attempted to readjust, aspiring to incite a confrontation between them instead. Abruptly, the system identified critical peril and activated emergency evacuation protocol. For 600 seconds, Chen acquired 20 agility and transformed strength into endurance. However, subsequently, 33% of his 3 primary attributes would be irrevocably diminished. The instant it engaged, Chen experienced an entirely new wave of energy. He leaped into the sky, evaded both strikes, and caused the bear and tiger to collide with one another. Chen was astonished by how nimble and rapidly he had transformed. Nevertheless, the bear and tiger continued pursuing him. This left Chen feeling apprehensive as he sprinted. Why weren't they battling one another? Eventually, he managed to rid himself of them. Nevertheless, Chen experienced a twinge of remorse. The emergency evacuation protocol was remarkable, yet the cost was harsh. It was then that he realized he had sprinted all the way to the frigid peak. Thus he opted to utilize the remaining time to search for the colossal creature. With a single leap, he traversed an incredible span. He was grateful for the escape option. Without it, the thick snow would have exhausted him rapidly. Upon arriving at the peak, Chen eventually discerned a silhouette and contemplated whether this was the fabled behemoth. As soon as he laid eyes on it, the system declared that the task had been accomplished and presented him with the reward. However, the monumental quest now had an additional phase. He was required to confront the giant to obtain 10 attribute points. Chen was immediately vexed and questioned whether the system had lost its mind. At that moment, one of the colossal creature's companions sensed something, prompting Chen to swiftly conceal himself in his location. Nevertheless, the allure of 10 attribute points was exceedingly enticing, prompting him to experiment by accelerating to his utmost speed. He seized a pebble and flung it at the colossal creature. The stone soared through the air languidly, brushed against the giant, and was so minuscule that the giant remained oblivious. However, the giant's companion detected it and started growling, sensing impending danger. Chen was elated when the assignment was completed and he received the 10 attribute points. Nevertheless, the system promptly unveiled a third level. Overcome the colossal adversary solo for 100 attribute points. Upon witnessing this, Chen hesitated. The allure of a reward totaling 100 points was astonishingly enticing, and could entirely alter his circumstances. He wavered on whether to attempt it. As he continued to ponder, the colossal creature became irritated by its companion's snarling, struck the earth forcefully, and commanded them to hush. That solitary strike propelled snow into the atmosphere and entombed Chen beneath it. His faculties momentarily dulled, accentuating the colossal strength of the giant with excruciating clarity. Chen whispered that not even 10,000 attribute points were worth sacrificing his life. The setting transitioned to dusk. Several days later, at the Novice Clan encampment, Lisa inquired of the Coconut Grove girls about their findings during the nocturnal watch, and they expressed their regrets. They had not discovered anyone. Lisa instructed them to expand the patrol area and continue the search. Ayun bleakly suggested they brace for the worst, dreading that Chen was deceased. Lisa promptly interrupted her in frustration, prompting her to remember that Chen had endangered his own life to rescue them all. At that moment, a lad from the Bay tribe burst in, proclaiming that their monarch had come back. The moment Chen crossed into the area, everyone hurried over, concerned about his well-being. Mia approached and observed that Agun was accompanying him. She inquired as to why Agun hadn't ignited the signal earlier, allowing them to save Chen. But Agun replied that King Chen had instructed him not to draw attention to his arrival. At that moment, Lisa showed up and shouted for everyone to cease surrounding him and allow Chen to take a break. She took hold of Chen, instructed everyone to return to their stations, and proclaimed that she would care for him for the time being. She additionally cautioned that should anyone disclose the information, they would encounter severe repercussions. This instilled fear in everyone, prompting unanimous agreement. Within the residence, Chen expressed his gratitude that Sam and the others had arrived back unharmed, and acknowledged he had not anticipated them to return with hyena pups as well. He requested Lisa to allow Sam to nurture them, as Sam may require additional assistance when venturing out independently in the future. Lisa remarked that Chen ought to prioritize his own concerns first. Regardless of his abilities, he still needed to attend to his physical well-being. Chen stated that the injuries were not severe. He was merely fatigued and would recuperate after rest. Yet he still wished to manage tribal matters. Lisa rested a leg against his abdomen and gradually glided it downwards. All right, she had told Sam, but reminded him that as sovereign, he shouldn't feel obligated to handle everything on his own. Furthermore, she expressed that she had no desire to lose her partner. Then Lisa unexpectedly pressed on his delicate area, causing Chen to tense up and plead with her to shift. She eventually withdrew and advised him to take a break. Chen was taken aback, recognizing that Lisa was becoming increasingly assertive. Once Lisa exited, Lenggu Cui inquired about Chen's well-being. Lisa responded that he was well, merely requiring some recuperation. Thus, she was ensuring that no one interrupted him. Subsequently, Chen activated his system interface and joyfully observed that, despite the deduction of 4 attribute points, he had still accrued a total of 10. For him, the journey had been worthwhile. However, he also recognized that great strength, combined with minimal agility, was ineffectual in critical situations. Agility was essential for survival. Thus, Chen prioritized agility initially. The system indicated it had attained 5 points, reaching a limit. To elevate it once more now required twice the effort. Chen contemplated whether increasing agility to 10 with double points would reach another limit, subsequently doubling again, and then quadrupling thereafter. If that's the case, attaining 22 agility would prove to be quite challenging. This prompted Chen to ponder if every statistic had limits. To evaluate it, he opted to extend each characteristic to its existing maximum initially. As Chen augmented his stone attribute, a ferocious wave surged within him, as if his form was on the verge of to explode. His footwear and trousers tore asunder as his physique expanded. He recognized that merely 2 additional characteristics were left to reach their maximum threshold levels. Fatigued, Chen reclined on the mattress, contemplating that his forthcoming efforts ought to contribute toward reaching another milestone. Subsequently, he drifted off to slumber. Eventually, all operations in the novice region were functioning seamlessly. Lisa was instructing everyone on the proper use of slingshots. She even showcased her skills, striking 6 targets, brushing against one and failing to hit another. Suddenly, Chen appeared unexpectedly and commended everyone for their outstanding performance on their initial attempt. Lisa spotted him and promptly inquired why he was present after she had instructed him to take a break. Chen responded that he felt entirely well. However, Lisa observed his new trousers, suspected he had been involved with another woman, and was prepared to reprimand him. Chen swiftly articulated that his garments had become ill-fitting due to his enhanced strength, virtually imploring her to let the matter go. Lisa subsequently informed him that the Slinger Squad had been established, although attaining genuine proficiency would require time. Chen inquired about the well-being of Huang Shu and Ayan, as well as the status of their recovery from injuries. Lisa claimed that Huang Shu declined to remain in bed and behave like a liability to the community. Therefore, he proceeded to the on-water to Huang Shu. Thus, there was no cause for concern in that regard. She mentioned that Ayan concerned her more, as Ayan's wounds were less severe. Perhaps due to Lisa having reprimanded her previously, Ayan had been in a terrible disposition. Chen informed Lisa that Ayan was profoundly concerned for her and quietly bore a significant burden, prompting Lisa to ought to regard Ayan with a bit more kindness. Subsequently, Chen remarked that he was returning to recuperate, as in a few days he would have to journey north to gather those precious millet crops. He additionally intended to continue developing his creations throughout that period. The setting transitioned once more afterwards, with Chen having created a numerical chart ranging from 1 to 9. He intended to instruct on basic addition and subtraction next. By developing written language and numerical systems, Chen acquired 20 attribute points. Subsequently, the system revealed that his technology points had attained 100, and a new technology storefront had unlocked. It permitted Chen to exchange technology points for valuable instruments and legacy markers, although the traded items were non-returnable. The system subsequently presented a comprehensive inventory of products and assets accessible for him to purchase with those points. Enthused by the multitude of choices, Chen examined the roster and readied himself to select his inaugural item. It truly prompts curiosity about what he will trade first. Regarding impending issues, whether stemming from the Colossal Rock faction or escalating friction with Tina, that could introduce a significant amount of suspense to the narrative. Let's observe how it unfolds. Remain attentive for additional updates on the channel. Following the arrival of the electronics shop, Chen reviewed the stock and utilized 30 tech points to acquire an iron pot. It was a substantial deal. He selected it not solely for culinary purposes, but due to its iron composition. Secure it to his back, and it functioned as protective gear. Attach it to his forearm, and it transformed into a barrier. Yet its true significance emerged in a life-or-death scenario, when it could assist in vanquishing an adversary. Chen was so exhilarated with the acquisition that he scarcely registered the sound it produced. Upon hearing the commotion, Lu Teng became concerned for his monarch and ventured inside. There, he discovered Chen performing an enigmatic dance around the unfamiliar item, leaving him completely puzzled. In an attempt to protect himself, Chen asserted that he was in contact with deities and phantoms. Nevertheless, it was the moment to utilize the cauldron appropriately. He excavated a hole manually, allowing room for the smoking event and timber to sustain the blaze. Subsequently, all he needed to do was place the cauldron atop the flames and heat the water. To his astonishment, the system regarded that as advancement and granted him an additional 10 technology points, which was uplifting. In the past, Chen had acquired a wealth of knowledge from a professor he greatly respected. He simply never envisioned that he would genuinely apply that understanding. As soon as the water reached a rolling boil, he introduced the primary components, which were seafood in this instance, and commenced the preparation of fish broth. He mixed all the components thoroughly. The system awarded an additional 10 points for devising a novel culinary technique. For Chen, today's feast was twice as delectable. At that moment, Stonebone entered with uplifting tidings. They had ultimately generated salt through the evaporation of seawater in the salt flat, receiving even additional aspects. Furthermore, with salt now accessible, the cuisine was significantly enhanced. As a token of appreciation, Chen allowed him to sample the trial broth prior to returning him to his duties. The credits he recently utilized on the cauldron returned swiftly, rendering it his most lucrative transaction in some time. Following the flavor evaluation, Chen instructed Lu Teng to assemble the remainder of the clan and request that each person bring their own bowls. It was the inaugural occasion they had savored seafood cooked to such perfection. Thus, the novel tastes surprised them unexpectedly. Fortunately, there was an abundance, and everyone could even enjoy seconds. Mia was among them. After 2 servings, she still craved additional helpings. Ayu fretted that another individual might miss out, but Chen guaranteed her that there was plenty for all. And should. No, he could merely prepare an additional quantity. He still required another portion for the sentinels and reconnaissance groups in any case. The individuals at the outpost had to sample it as well, so in a few days, he intended to deliver the fish stew personally. He adored instructing the community in novel skills and witnessing their joy. This motivated him to also educate them in the use of wooden chopsticks, enabling them to partake in roast beef like cultured individuals. In the meantime, while dishes rattled all around him, Chen reopened the electronics shop in search of another practical gadget. He had previously accumulated 100 technology points, thus exchanging them for something novel was logical. He promptly dismissed the mathematical and agricultural heaters. They were unnecessary. What was truly essential for cultivation was precious seed, which the tribe had yet to successfully collect. Regrettably, he was cut off at that moment and informed that a snare in the north had been triggered. There were no indications of individuals in the vicinity, suggesting it was probably just a creature, perhaps still breathing. Lisa's. Her unexpected appearance caught him off guard, yet her typical severity resolved the matter swiftly. She instructed the sentinels not to disturb the monarch over such a triviality, and simply to eliminate the creature. She was irritated that Chen had been preoccupied and unable to consider her, so she decided to come herself. At this moment, he needed to restore harmony within his household. This time, he vowed to return with something fresh and initiate further transformations for the community. He cemented that vow with a kiss, which departed. She became exasperated, then redirected her attention to the confined creature because, instead of conquering it, he may have the capacity to control it. Thus, he delegated the outstanding tasks to Lisa. The nettles that Huang Shu had brought previously were already depleted, necessitating the gathering of additional supplies. Even more crucially, they needed to locate valuable millet whose seeds could be sown in the fields. As making his way toward the snares, Chen continued to seek out seeds, yet discovered none. Finally, they reached. However, the vicinity surrounding the confined creature was oddly silent. When they glanced within, they were astonished. Recently, the creature had been wailing fervently for assistance, but now it merely growled in anguish, its limb impaled and pulsating. It was yet another hyena attracted to the area in pursuit of sustenance. A single glance revealed that she bore a striking resemblance to a sow. Sam, particularly attuned to the scent of milk, immediately discerned that she was breastfeeding. Most probably, this was the progenitor of the hyena offspring. Aware of his duty towards those cubs, Chen descended towards her, despite the peril posed by her talons. Once they had bound her with cord, they effortlessly lifted the creature. Impaired by the injury, the hyena had turned nearly as compliant as a domesticated canine. At this point, the responsibility of her care shifted to Sam. Chen instructed him to rescue the creature and provide her with nourishment. It didn't appear to be a straightforward task. The hyena pups they had captured previously rejected every morsel of flesh he presented, leaving him completely unaware of what their dam would consume. Sam persisted in seeking the appropriate nourishment, yet the cubs only became more emaciated and frail. As Chen had anticipated, rearing infant hyenas proved to be considerably more challenging than it initially appeared. Yet the mother being ensnared could ultimately rescue them. Upon their return, Chen commanded that the mature hyena be restrained, nourished with meat, and presented to the cubs. That ought to assist them. Thus Sam rushed back to the community immediately. Chen could merely wish that the feral creatures would become accustomed to their surroundings and permit themselves to be domesticated. Subsequently, Chen dispatched the fighter to examine the remaining snares, while he and the others proceeded further northward. The further they traveled, the greater the number of untamed creatures they encountered. Fortunately, his strategy succeeded. They discovered wild millet that had recently matured. Had he delayed just a few more days, they could have forfeited the harvest, making this fortune seem like a blessing from the divine. With still some time remaining before their return, Chen opted to begin collecting healing plants as well. It could have been their most fruitful day in quite some time, as assets accumulated before dusk. However, as twilight descended, the more formidable creatures stirred. The bear's boisterous roar was well known to Chen. Thus, he instructed everyone to take cover in the foliage. They became mute immediately, attempting to conceal their presence. However, the creature advanced swiftly, and in a matter of moments was already near. In such peril, they might have abandoned the millet and herbs that hindered their movement. However, Chen prohibited it. He declined to squander such precious resources, and instructed them to remain patient until the creature had moved on. No one contested. Nevertheless, all individuals adjusted into stances that would enable them to sprint immediately if required. Survival was the utmost priority for the clan. To Chen, the stance appeared so absurd that he almost burst into laughter. However, the bear wandering in the vicinity could very well be a familiar companion from the past. Regrettably, as soon as the bear's roars subsided, the group became overly comfortable and began murmuring nonsensical inquiries, much to Chen's annoyance. To silence them, he cautioned that he would hurl them directly into the bear's enclosure. Jaw, if it returned, due to their clamor. However, his boisterous menace truly resonated with the creature, prompting it to approach them once more. The bear bellowed ferociously, crashing into one tree after another, unable to maintain its balance and perpetually tumbling over. It had likely sustained significant injuries and couldn't settle down, prompting Stonebone to propose capturing it for a meal. However, they weren't the sole individuals with that notion. Following an unfamiliar person's, a cry echoed, causing the bear to rear up and bolt away from the pursuers in the opposite direction. On this occasion, it was pursued by individuals from the Mountain Clan, the very ones Hector sought retribution against. Fueled by that animosity, he leaped from the underbrush and pursued them. That imprudent action almost revealed everyone, but Chen pulled him back into concealment. With a pronounced rustle, they struck once more. However, the commotion attracted the notice of an individual from the Mountain Clan. Fortunately, they disregarded the diversion and maintained their concentration on the quarry. Hector, nonetheless, was unable to comprehend Chen's choice. He believed they possessed the ideal opportunity for retribution, but Chen intervened. However, animosity must not obscure his discernment. The adversary vastly outnumbered them, and launching an assault at this moment would have been imprudent. Chen's sole benefit was that the adversary was exposed in the open, while his team remained concealed in darkness. If Hector desired a confrontation, he needed to bide his time for the opportune moment. Thus, for the time being, he had to comply. In the meantime, the bear was utterly exhausted and fell to the ground in the center of the glade. One of the individuals pursuing it brazenly ridiculed the creature and persistently urged the unfortunate creature to rise to its feet repeatedly. However, the chieftain of the mountain tribe condemned such brutality. The bear had consumed deer meat infused with toxic white blossoms, subsequently suffering an injury to its abdomen. Considering everything, the mere feat of its journey this distance was remarkable, warranting a dignified demise. Degrading him in such a manner was unworthy of a man. Thus, as retribution, the wrongdoer was thrown into a tree. The leader subsequently commanded everyone to vacate the glade, as he readied himself to deliver the bear a swift, albeit still agonizing, conclusion. To achieve that, he planned to utilize a blade crafted from natural volcanic glass known as obsidian. That aspect regarding the lure also captured Chen's interest. Only a handful of primitive individuals would consider contaminating bait in such a manner. Thus, their cleverness astonished him. However, the system resisted the idea of exterminating the bear and instructed Chen to rescue it. That entailed jeopardizing a confrontation with the Mountain Clan to save the very creature that had recently attempted to slay him. Utterly absurd. Nonetheless, the system had already foreseen Chen's indignation. Should he decline this uncommon endeavor, it would never present itself again. The system afforded him no opportunity to deliberate, and Chen acquiesced despite the peril. Recalling every offense he could conceive, Chen berated the system as he advanced toward the objective. That rage propelled him to halt the onyx weapon. As soon as Chen emerged, he ruined the whole event that the leader had organized for his fighters. By audaciously claiming the clan's quarry, Chen's faction exposed themselves to danger and infuriated their adversaries. At this moment, Chen decided to place his faith in the system, anticipating that the bear's appreciation would validate the hazard. The moment he acquiesced, the system dispatched a secondary task. The bear had been contaminated with ordinary narcotics and punctured in the abdomen. Chen had a mere 10 minutes to halt the hemorrhaging and neutralize the poison, or it would perish. Upon his acceptance, Chen had entirely neglected the toxin. Quickly contemplating, he understood that the objective was to rescue the bear, rather than initiate a conflict with the mountain tribe, and an outright confrontation with them was the very last outcome he desired. However, there was insufficient time to negotiate for a tranquil transaction. Simultaneously, the adversary leader identified the youth who had recently frequented the sea tribe. His contemptuous demeanor enraged Hector. He hadn't even recalled his name. Hector clenched his jaw, merely biding his time for the opportunity to strike. Chen disregarded the interaction. He was overly concentrated on the system notifications, which continuously cautioned him about repercussions. Should he falter, the mechanism would reduce the segments of Chen's anatomy associated with procreation by 50%. Even for that, it was merciless. Chen immediately envisioned Lisa abandoning him with nothing but gathered millet. He declined to allow his sovereignty to conclude in such a manner, so fury consumed him, and he demonstrated his might to the adversary. Chen was prepared to perish while rescuing the creature, yet he refused to pull the others down alongside him. Thus he instructed them to safeguard themselves. With that, the conflict ultimately erupted. Everyone dedicated themselves to safeguarding Chen as he focused on the bear. Fortunately, he managed to halt the hemorrhaging in less than a minute, but that was the straightforward aspect. Subsequently, he needed to counteract the toxin, an experience he had never encountered previously. The bear's care depended solely on Chen, and with him removed from the confrontation, his team began to falter. The conflict could swiftly conclude in demise. Each individual had sustained significant injuries that hindered their ability to combat effectively, yet they persevered, so Chen could complete his task. Then, the leader of the mountain tribe abruptly commanded a halt. He genuinely appreciated Chen's ensemble. For a collection of drifters recently united, they had battled remarkably effectively. As a gesture of recompense, he proposed to preserve their existence if they retreated. Hector declined. A desire for retribution ignited within him, and he was eager to rectify past grievances immediately. As he expressed, they were merely getting started. Regardless of the evening, they still had ample energy remaining. The others supported that audacity to deter the adversary and comfort Chen as he grappled with the toxin. In the meantime, the system's deadline for addressing the issue was swiftly approaching. Chen had 6 minutes remaining and was still completely at a loss regarding how to counteract the poison. Regardless, the others remarked that he could observe that even Stonebone was struggling to remain vertical. If this continued, the endeavor would be doomed to failure. He could nearly perceive the system chuckling, but to preserve his own dignity, Chen was prepared to humiliate himself if necessary. In the meantime, the adversary leader acknowledged their rejection and sank into a perilous crouch. He exerted such intensity into the motion that his foot colliding with the earth generated a tremendous tremor. No one had witnessed anything of the sort, and they stood paralyzed. Fortunately, Chen rescued them. Forfeiting his own armament, he broke through the surge and stirred up a billow of debris. He had desired to evade confrontation with the tribe, but now it was evident he needed to intervene. That merely intensified the leader's curiosity. Now he sought to uncover which clan could challenge them so audaciously. He had disregarded them as nomads, yet it was evident that he had miscalculated. It wasn't his manner to overpower a small faction with a battalion, so as soon as he obtained what he desired, he allowed them to leave. Rather, he vowed to confront Chen on a different occasion, with balanced forces on each side. The leader of the mountain clan was delighted to have encountered him today. Thus he departed with an air of dignity, escorting the injured. That encompassed the individual he had thrown into a tree for ridiculing the bear. He was in such poor condition now that others had to transport him, thus. Chen's recently established clan succeeded in evading calamity. Now, only a single issue persisted, eliminating the toxin afflicting the bear. As Chen tended to it, the mountain clan was perplexed as to why their leader had willingly relinquished the quarry. For them, it was illogical, yet the absence of ginseng clarified it. They depended on that herb to fortify themselves. Furthermore, the mystical energy bestowed by their wizard was almost depleted. Chen was no ordinary adversary. He had thwarted an attack fueled by 70% of the leader's might. Observing Chen's unwavering composure, the leader became convinced that he was concealing something. His armament appeared peculiar and excessively keen for such a feeble clan. Examining his jet-black weapon, the leader pledged to exert his utmost in their forthcoming confrontation. In the meantime, Chen solicited suggestions from the remaining members of the group. Regrettably, none of them were aware of how to counteract narcotic toxins, leaving them with no choice but to observe. Still inquired why he was rescuing the bear whatsoever. They believed it was merely quarry they had contended for, yet there was no opportunity to elucidate. What they had to comprehend was that this had evolved into a matter of survival or demise. The system granted him one last chance, prompting Chen to utilize honeysuckle and burdock. Both. Botanicals were recognized for their ability to combat toxins, although it remained uncertain if they would be effective against narcotics. They pried the creature's jaws apart and crammed in all that they had assembled. Chen dedicated the lingering moments while sustaining his inhalation, anticipating a miraculous event, each moment stretched interminably. Only in the concluding moments, the system ultimately dispatched an alert indicating that the bear's state had stabilized. With the bear safe from peril, they could at last exhale once more. Only Hector persisted in urging them to pursue the mountain clan before it traveled too far. Similar to a sagacious monarch, Chen elucidated that no one had yet comprehended the complete power or tactics of the opposing force. If they barreled in recklessly, they would incur substantial losses without justification. Even a miraculous triumph would be futile. Chen declined to squander his resources on retribution, as the mountain clan would inevitably approach them. He required time to strategize and fortify his Liliang. Having clarified that, he dispatched the others back to the hamlet, while he remained to observe the bear. Stonebone was to inform the queen to strengthen the patrols and station sentinels while those guests were en route. Isolated with the creature, Chen perceived the night as exceedingly prolonged. Hunters continually approached, drawn by the bear's fragrance, and he was compelled to fend them off repeatedly. Thus, Chen dedicated the entire night battling feral creatures. He was astonished by how delicious they were and joyfully consumed the roasted meat. At the break of day, the bear stirred and oriented itself towards the aroma of sustenance. Chen presented it with a morsel while they still had the opportunity, and generously provided a portion of meat. Uncertain if the creature consumed prepared meals, he also set aside a distinct heap of uncooked rabbits just in case. When the blaze extinguished, Chen and the untamed creature had satisfied their hunger with prey and reclined to relax. Subsequently, the system declared that the task had been accomplished, granted empathy points from the bear, and proposed to allocate them right away. Chen prioritized those aspects into corporeal strength initially, elevating it to a pivotal threshold and transforming himself into a genuine force to be reckoned with. He was delighted with the prize, and as he relished it, the bear presented him with a portion of its own sustenance. That was its manner of demonstrating fidelity. So, Chen acquiesced, and partook in the repast with it. Now completely recovered, the bear ought to have ventured on its own path, and Chen wished they would cross paths once more in the future. However, the creature had alternative intentions. It swiftly seized Chen's garments, emphasized its desire to proceed to the settlement alongside him, tenaciously advocating for an affirmative response. A creature of that magnitude would consume a significant amount, yet having a bear as a companion could considerably elevate Chen's prominence. Thus, in spite of its awkwardness and restricted applicability, Chen brought it with him. He bestowed the name Shunda upon the bear, conferring an official status within the community. Appreciative, the bear joyfully sprang towards us. Champion, to embrace and affectionately kiss him, then trailed behind. At this moment, with a formidable ally by his side, Chen was able to trail the mountain clan and survey their path. Perched upon Shunda, he effortlessly pursued the path the adversary had recklessly abandoned. Yet, as they ventured deeper, the undergrowth thickened. This indicated but one possibility. A bamboo grove lay ahead. Bamboo was not only beneficial for construction, but it could also be utilized to create firework explosives. All he required was the ideal combination of nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal compressed into a bamboo cylinder, an impeccable vessel for the powder. If they were able to create firecrackers, they could surprise the adversary in a pivotal confrontation. Although the explosion turned out to be feeble, the sound itself had the potential to frighten the clan and cause them to scatter. Chen had already acquired saltpeter and had mastered the art of producing charcoal and constructing a kiln. Yet sulfur remained an obstacle. That mineral typically occurs exclusively in the vicinity of volcanoes. He accessed the system map to refine the search. As he anticipated, a volcano loomed close to the icy behemoth. If he maintained a sufficient distance, he could afford to investigate the sulfur in that location. Previously, Chen had solely concentrated on fleeing and overlooked the nearby assets. However, with Shunda accompanying him, this journey would be considerably simpler. After reviewing the strategy repeatedly, he ultimately instructed the bear to proceed northward, to witness something extraordinary. They dashed away at maximum velocity and quickly arrived at the identical lake where Hector and Sam had been. Examining the vicinity, Chen informed Shunda that he had traversed this route previously. He had neither the opportunity nor the desire to investigate during that period, but now he could compensate for it. As they approached the lake cautiously, both remained silent, anticipating the aquatic creature they had often heard tales of. But nothing emerged. Chen was on the verge of proceeding when Shunda abruptly tensed and retreated. At that very moment, bubbles erupted on the surface of the lake, indicating the presence of something vast beneath. Suddenly, an enormous cranium emerged, bellowing as the remainder of its form trailed behind. It was an authentic Tyrannosaurus, searching for effortless quarry. Only a broken tether trailing from it hinted that the creature had once been owned by an individual. This T-Rex was the final discovery Chen anticipated. He and the bear sank down into the foliage, taut, assessing the creature's dimensions. The neckband it wore suggested it could be the giant's companion, having fled while its owner slumbered. If that is the case, then the being that frightened away the saber-toothed tiger and left enormous footprints in the woods was likely another T-Rex, similar to this one. And if that were accurate, the colossal mountain being had been slumbering for no less than 15 days. Regardless, squandering their prime opportunity to escape would be unwise. As soon as the creature pivoted, Chen instructed Shunda to dash toward the mountain. The bear complied, transporting him further into the frosty ecosystem. However, the snow accumulated with each stride until they were compelled to halt. If anything provoked a landslide, there would be no way to evade it. To ensure his safety, Chen dismounted from Shunda, which evidently caused concern for the bear. In reality, he intended to trail behind him and provide protection should peril arise. To comfort the bear, Chen advised him to remain vigilant and observe his surroundings. Introducing Shunda had been a clever decision, as each motion of his mighty paws cast snow aside and revealed the earth underneath. Then Chen detected a pungent odor he recognized immediately. He commenced the quest for the origin. The further they delved into the snow, the more potent the odor of the charred match grew. After considerable exertion, he ultimately discovered a sulfur reserve, a crucial element that could determine the impending conflict with the mountain clan. Chen was exhilarated by the revelation, because with this quantity of sulfur, they could commence producing firecrackers as early as tomorrow. After collecting as much as he could, Chen loaded it onto Shunda and made his way back home. As he traversed the initial dwellings of the community, Sam hurried over, truly delighted to encounter him. What no one anticipated, however, was the bear beside him. To alleviate any fear, Chen presented Shunda and urged everyone not to harm him. Initially, the community grappled with embracing a feral creature within their midst. However, it wasn't long before everyone desired a chance to ride it. Chen might have permitted it if the bear had consented, but he was unwilling to let Shunda be intimidated and vowed to seek out another creature instead. After the materials were offloaded, Chen instructed IU to dry the bamboo without providing any reasoning. He then shifted his attention to Lisa, who was fearlessly scrutinizing the bear at close range, captivated by such a formidable creature and feeling a sense of pride in Chen. However, that joyful occasion was short-lived. Immediately upon returning, Chen was met with distressing news. A colossal marine creature emerged close to the coastline, flailing wildly and preventing the fishermen from carrying out their tasks. Its form stirred up swells large enough to obliterate all the salt curing on the shore, rendering the fishermen powerless. Upon receiving the pressing announcement, Chen pacified the courier and proceeded to the shore personally to examine it. Mounting Shunda, he arrived at the ocean in mere moments, where shattered containers bobbed amid the waves. The being was an ichthyosaur, a sizable carnivorous aquatic reptile resembling a fish, inherently fierce and oviparous. It was still in a formative phase, approximately 7 meters in length, and intent on obliterating any living beings in its vicinity. The conduct was concerning even to Chen, yet nobody was prepared to allow it to wreak havoc unchecked. If they failed to halt the ichthyosaur, it would continue to devastate everything and inflict substantial damages. To conquer it, they had to entice it onto dry ground, where the creature would forfeit a portion of its power. Subsequent to articulating the strategy, Chen propelled Shunda towards the waves and launched an assault on the reckless ichthyosaur. The initial strike sent the bear tumbling onto the shore, yet it also revealed the creature's underbelly. In the final moment, Chen sprang away from Shunda and plunged his axe into the creature's hide. That merely infuriated the creature even more, prompting it to turn, seize Chen in its maw, and pull him into the depths. The ichthyosaur propelled itself toward the ocean floor, striving to prevent him from surfacing. Chen understood he had perished long before the creature truly devoured him. Thus, he exerted all his might to pry its jaws apart. In the meantime, Shunda continued to pursue them, and before the creature could venture too distant, he seized its tail and pulled it back toward the land. The bear had comprehended Chen's strategy and adhered to it, yet the contest remained fierce. Amidst the ichthyosaur's formidable jaws and the scarcity of oxygen, no average individual could have withstood it. Therefore, it came as no shock that Chen began to lose faith. Emerging from the murky depths, a woman surfaced and rescued him. Armed with dual blades, she sliced through the ichthyosaur's physique and compelled it to free Chen. Blood coursed through the pristine water, tainting it a deep crimson and obscuring the girl from sight. Deprived of oxygen, Chen's extremities gradually lost sensation, rendering him incapable of swimming back. In his final lucid instants, he could solely contemplate the young woman gliding so adeptly through the ocean. As Chen reopened his eyes, he noticed Shunda on the golden sand, nervously keeping vigil over him alongside the remainder of the clan. Once expelling seawater from his lungs, Chen observed his savior perched on a boulder and beckoned Alana to approach. She was the foremost swimmer of the sea tribe, frequently foraged in the waters, and was well aware of the precise spot to deliver a fatal blow to the creature. It was widely recognized that the sea tribe wasn't renowned for their intellect, but in comparison to the rest, Alana appeared particularly lacking in wit. Nonetheless, because she had preserved his life, Chen overlooked that and genuinely expressed his gratitude. What intrigued him now was the source of those obsidian blades she possessed. She clarified that she seized them from a malevolent individual who had intruded upon their tribe's domain. Alana responded promptly, but then feared they intended to confiscate the blades, and almost instigated a confrontation. This was circumvented once they clarified Chen's involvement in the resolution, and she ultimately relaxed. She struggled to recall all the details about him, yet she grasped that he desired to assist the ocean community. Once assured of his reliability, Alana recounted the day the Highland tribe abruptly assaulted their territory. She was rendered unconscious during the altercation, and upon regaining consciousness, her brother Fang and the others found themselves ensnared in a cavern. They were toiled relentlessly, compelled to undertake the most sordid tasks, and when they could no longer endure it, Fang devised a plan for their escape. He would confront a guard and transfer the weapon to Alana, who needed to sever the rope and plunge from the precipice into the river. Fang was convinced it was the sole method to rescue her. Thus he instructed her to adhere to his directives without hesitation. If it succeeded, she was meant to locate Hector initially, the fortunate individual anticipated to endure. Given Alana's confrontational disposition, she would have hardly endured confinement, much less concoct such a scheme, prompting Fang to assign her to an ally he held in high regard. At that moment, a guard observed their dubious actions and approached to reprimand them for flouting directives. That negligence proved to be a costly mistake for him. As Fang attacked at that precise instant, utilizing the remains they were compelled to transport once more. The sentinel was immobilized. Alana seized his firearm, leaped into the water, and navigated downstream. That's how she encountered the enormous creature assaulting Chen, and subsequently reconnected with her compatriots from the sea tribe. Upon listening to her, Chen proposed that she attend the camp where Fang had arranged for her to encounter Hector, but Alana declined to return without something in hand. Given that the ichthyosaur was lifeless in the water, they would retrieve it. They hoisted the creature onto Zunda and towed it across the beach, creating an extensive mark in the sand. Partway through their journey, they unexpectedly encountered Hector and Stonebone, who had arrived to greet their sovereign. They undoubtedly did not anticipate Alana's presence alongside him. Her narrative required time to unfold, but Hector was now aware that approximately 10 additional members of the Sea Tribe were still imprisoned. They needed to be saved prior to the Mountain Tribe commencing their torment, yet rushing in without a strategy would be excessively perilous. Chen devoted an extensive period attempting to soothe Hector, but then the smoke rising from the mountain drew his attention. It was a beacon blaze, alerting of peril on the western peak. No creature, regardless of its intelligence, could ignite a signal fire atop a peak, prompting Chen to become cautious without delay. And for justifiable cause, the chief of the mountain tribe had vowed retribution when he departed with his quarry, and he was unlikely to overlook it. It appeared that the mountain tribe had arrived, but to confirm, Chen had to inspect the boundary personally. He promptly commanded Stonebone to lead the others to the stronghold while the fighters gathered and strengthened the fortifications against any assault. Hector and Alana were dispatched to the western peaks to rendezvous with the patrol and conceal themselves in wait by the snares until Chen arrived with reinforcements. As he raced back to the encampment, he hoped the deities had bestowed compassion and that the signal blaze had been ignited inadvertently. Fortunately, Lisa was already outdoors, anticipating his arrival. She had been agitated regarding the creature battle along the coast, incapable of remaining motionless as she envisioned one catastrophe after another. As soon as she noticed he was uninjured, Lisa breathed a sigh of relief and proposed to explore further while he took a break. Chen declined. He valued her worry, yet the beacon still beckoned to him, and despite the presence of the warriors alongside her, she would be unable to contain Hector if he lost control and lunged at the leader of the mountain tribe. Therefore, he opted to manage it personally, enlisting Huangshu, Longguk, Sam, and Ai, combatants who had already demonstrated their prowess on numerous occasions. Lisa remained behind to supervise the settlement's protection and the injured. Sam had recently discovered a hill with an unobstructed vantage point, allowing her to quickly mobilize with reinforcements in the event of a threat. Chen preferred solitude, yet Mia was adamant. She had never been permitted to join previously, and if turned down, she vowed to accompany them regardless. After finalizing his instructions, Chen assigned Liu Tang the responsibility of protecting the queen, and immediately set off towards the west. As they arrived at the others, twilight was descending, an occurrence that might benefit Chen. In that faint illumination, snares were significantly more challenging to detect, and thus were the concealed locations of every fighter. However, the mountain tribe had foreseen that. They progressed gradually with torches, making no attempt to mask their presence. As though he detected the peril, their chief brought the clan to a standstill just prior to the lethal area. He appeared to be aware that Chen was already present at the frontier, anticipating their arrival. Thus, he summoned him to emerge and engage in a fair confrontation. Nobody comprehended how he was so confident that Chen was there, yet nobody exposed themselves. Subsequently, the leader composedly disclosed the method by which he located individuals. The region was eerily quiet. No birdsong, no insects, no amphibians. Merely a sizable gathering nearby could frighten the creatures from their concealed spots and reveal a trap. Even at that moment, Chen's faction remained concealed, compelling the leader to transition from mockery to intimidation. The leader detested employing Qixin Zhao's abilities, yet he loathed this game of concealment and pursuit even more. That sufficed. Chen ultimately emerged from concealment, prepared to confront the adversary directly. It became evident that the mountain tribe was encircled on all fronts, placing them at a distinct disadvantage. Nevertheless, the leader appeared satisfied that the figures on both ends were balanced. Lifting his jet-black sword, he enthusiastically confronted Chen to a battle, relieved that this time he could combat without concerns about looks or honor. However, precisely as Chen anticipated, Hector seized the opportunity to retaliate against the Sea Tribe, and struck at the earliest possible instant. He had no regard for dignity or regulations. He attacked audaciously from the rear. They were merely a few paces away from a savage confrontation, yet the mountain tribe fighter halted him abruptly. Musi hurled himself into Hector's trajectory, colliding with him using all his might. Like two headstrong rams, neither yielded an iota in sheer strength, and both forged a path through the earth beneath them. Initially, Musi appeared to be at a disadvantage. He was marginally smaller, yet he compensated for this with significantly enhanced nimbleness. The leader was thrilled, commended him for the rescue, and instructed him to have a good time with Hector. Ultimately, Musi composed himself and flung Hector against a boulder, dispatching a shudder coursing through the earth. The intensity of it surprised even Chen. Up to that point, Hector had never been defeated by anyone. Thus, Chen was profoundly unsettled by what he was witnessing. At that identical instant, another adversarial combatant traversed beneath one of the snares, and Ai unveiled a substantial log, suspended from a tree by a cord. The blow was forceful enough to incapacitate an average individual, yet he pushed the log aside, as if it were insignificant. The second mountain tribe fighter displayed such ridiculous power that Chen briefly lost sight of the entire ambush strategy. Following multiple collisions with the boulder, Hector began to expel clotted blood. Musi aimed to eliminate him swiftly. He had no desire to be defeated by an inexperienced rival. However, Hector evaded the subsequent strike. He was equally obstinate, grasping onto existence until the final moment. On this occasion, Hector seized him with an iron hold and pulled him towards the water. In that situation, Hector possessed a significant edge, and Musi was aware. He pressed his feet forcefully against the earth, yearning to escape, but merely positioned himself firmly in place. In that instant, Alana emerged from the water and attacked from the rear. With Musi immobilized, it ought to have been straightforward for her to thrust a blade into his back. However, the Mountain Clan would not permit that to occur. They seized their ally and launched him at Alana like a missile, pushing her back into the water. The Mountain Clan was so fierce, they would boldly advance into landscapes that put them at a disadvantage. Thus, Alana found herself with no alternative but to fend off the unfamiliar assailant in the river. Amidst the tumult that ensued, the sibling duo voiced their grievances to their captain. He had assured them of enjoyment, yet Musi and Zuihao had commenced without their participation. They were indifferent to whom they clashed with, and the initial target they noticed was Chen, observing his fighter's struggle. The pair of twins immediately dashed into his, intention, enthusiastic to conclude him swiftly, to the best of their ability, yet Huang Shi and Lang Gutsui obstructed them. If they sought the monarch, they would need to overcome the other fighters initially, which postponed their enjoyment minor. The siblings divided the adversaries amongst themselves and pledged that whoever was defeated would carry disgrace for eternity. Smirking, like lunatics, they plunged into combat, prepared to wager their lives merely to immerse themselves in the blood of their foes. In the meantime, Zuihao observed the conflicts erupting around him, and found himself unable to choose whom to assist. Combat was the only thing he understood, so to support the newcomer's triumph, he merely sought a weapon. He didn't need to look for long. A log was situated directly before him, and he nonchalantly wrenched it loose from the cord before hurling it over his back, spoiling the snare in the course of action. Equipped with that enormous timber, he surged forward toward the chief, who was engaged in combat with Chen. The leader clearly disapproved of Zuihao intervening, so he curtly instructed him to seek out another individual. Rather, disheartened, he complied the directive and began looking for Mudza. Yet Mudza was already restrained by Hector. Chen realized immediately that Hector, in that state, couldn't endure against two adversaries. Therefore, he promptly took action to assist him. However, the leader of the mountain tribe interrupted him. He lashed his sword with complete strength across Chen's root, compelling him to retreat and emphasizing that he needed to concentrate on. The leader was furious that Chen continued to disregard him and behaving as though he was absent. Thus, he launched another assault, repeatedly. Every arc of the obsidian blade aimed for Chen's neck, striving to sever his head. Yet Chen's axe continually deflected the ferocious blows. Growling, the chieftain lashed out recklessly and cautioned Chen to maintain his concentration. He sought to witness Chen's genuine might and initiate a genuine conflict between sovereigns. Chen understood that escaping this confrontation wouldn't come easily, and at that moment he was powerless to assist Hector. Thus, he resorted to more drastic actions and called out for someone, anyone, to halt Zuihao. At that instant, Zuihao pulled the timber along the earth, carving a slight furrow as he progressed toward Hector, moment by moment, yet still had not closed the distance. Suddenly, the log grew excessively weighty to raise, compelling him to look back. As she had vowed, Mia participated only once Chen issued the command. Now she was gripping Zhu Hao's armament. Since, in terms of raw power, she was unable to compete with the others, and Zuihao cast a brief glance at her, then sprang forward with those muscular limbs. He intended to seize her by the neck and pull her nearer. However, an arrow abruptly pierced his arm, merely penetrating the superficial layer of dermis. A subsequent arrow shot forth immediately, targeted directly at his visage. To protect his vision, he elevated the very arm that had already functioned as a protective barrier against strikes. He appeared exhilarated by this twist of fate. Now he had two companions to entertain him, immediately. Noticing that joyful visage, the leader permitted the imbalanced contest to persist. If Zuihao was indifferent, he could indulge himself as he wished. After they returned to the mountain, he would ultimately be solitary once more. In the meantime, Sam and IU endeavored to safeguard their companions, targeting any vulnerabilities they could identify. As Chen and the others engaged in a fierce confrontation at close quarters, they needed to exert every effort from a distance. However, The bear trap Ayu had previously employed proved ineffective against Shu Hao. Not only did he remain upright, but he also pulled her down using the rope. An adversary of that nature could solely be confronted with sheer might, yet they couldn't forsake the trap. All they could manage was to delay him, as Sam hurried back to the base for additional support. While Ayu endeavored to shift the confrontation with whatever resources she possessed, Hector continued to apply pressure on Muzi. Muzi struggled to escape, pummeling Hector's back with his fists, yet it was futile. Each strike elicited a profound, guttural expulsion of breath from Hector's chest. Regrettably, the blows were so forceful that blood began to stream from Hector's mouth. Still, he persisted in his refusal to cease, and continued to push Muzi towards the water. Aiming for a swift conclusion, Hector pooled all his energy and hoisted Muzi into the air. He dashed towards the river, keen to observe the swimming prowess of the mountain clan. Hector was just a few meters away from triumph when Alana abruptly halted him. She implored him not to plunge into the water. It was far too perilous. The individual hurled at her previously was still present, assaulting anything in proximity. To illustrate her point, Han abruptly seized her head and pulled her beneath the surface. That immediately placed Hector on high alert. Yet that momentary alarm resulted in him acquiring several additional contusions. Muzi relentlessly targeted every uncovered area, marking Hector's ashen skin with crimson bruises. Continuous strikes to the same areas resulted in internal hemorrhaging. Ultimately, Hector crumpled. But even from the floor, he remained unwilling to release Muzi. Concentrating his final strength into a singular fist, he abruptly lifted Muzi and tossed him across his shoulders, attempting to collide his skull with the earth. The blow was catastrophic. Blood cascaded from Muzi's brow, and he lost consciousness immediately. Hector fared little better. He collapsed next to him, attempting to stabilize his eyesight as everything became indistinct. Tormented by agony, Hector entrusted the remainder to his clan and wished for their victory. Simultaneously, Lang Uche and Huang Shui confronted the siblings. They had devised a novel tactic and were enthusiastic to trial it on the mountainous community. To accomplish it, they divided to opposite flanks and advanced in unison. Xiaohu merely chuckled uproariously, finding it amusing that the inexperienced clan believed it could launch an assault on them. Observing Lang Uche fall behind Huang Shui, the siblings attacked him simultaneously, endeavoring to disrupt their arrangement. They spared no effort, employing the most unscrupulous assaults they could muster. Thus, in a matter of moments, Lang Uche grasped at his eyes. Huang Shui was not inclined to remain idle. He hurried forward to assist. Instead of continuing to assault a sightless individual, he instructed them to seek out someone who could genuinely compete with them. Without a moment's pause, he thrust his hunting axe ahead and lodged it in the shoulder of an adversary. At this point, the battle was balanced. Each faction had an injured combatant. Defenseless, he realized he was incapable of confronting an opponent wielding a jet-black sword, so he lifted a modest shield instead. That captivated everyone's focus on him, yet it was merely a fragment of the strategy. Even amidst the battle, he tallied his movements to indicate to Lang Uche when to launch an attack, but the armor let him down. The foe crept in near and plunged a blade into his abdomen, leaving merely 2 strides before the target. The siblings were oblivious to the reason behind his counting, yet when just a single step was left, they ultimately comprehended. Huang Shui grasped the twin's limbs with all his might and restrained him in position as Lang Uche initiated the second phase. A single, decisive swing of the axe ought to have slain the bear, leading them to believe they had triumphed. Xiaohu didn't comprehend it immediately, but the instant he glimpsed Lang Uche looming over him, dread surged through him, and he struggled even more fiercely to escape. That occurred when his sibling burst in and pushed him out of the way, placing himself beneath the descending blade. Emerald blades of grass gradually transformed into crimson as Xiaohu observed in dread. In the meantime, Ayu exerted every effort to assist Mia. Xuehao was excruciatingly sluggish, thus her projectiles struck with precision, but his dermis was so resilient he scarcely sensed them. His arm resembled the spines of a porcupine, although the projectiles had merely penetrated a few centimeters. This could not persist. Mia was battling merely to remain on her feet as the log flailed about in all directions. Thus, Ayu needed to discover an alternative entrance. Fortunately, the identical cord utilized previously to tug the log was positioned close by. Ayu was aware that Mia would perceive the suggestion, thus she commenced launching projectiles in its direction. All members of the clan were aware that she never faltered during the heat of combat. Thus, Mia swiftly dashed toward the rope. At that instant, Xuehao became apprehensive when the opposition disappeared and assumed they were no longer interested in participating. However, that notion was fleeting. Mia engaged as though amusing an enormous adolescent, summoning him from behind while she entwined his legs into a secure tangle. For a time, he relished observing her orbit around him. Yet. Then his head collided forcefully with the earth, jolting him back to the present. Mia had invested all her effort in taking him down in a single action, and she reveled in her triumph. Numerous combatants had already resolved their confrontations, but not Hector. He had scarcely found a moment to recuperate when Musi re-emerged. Acknowledging that he had misjudged Hector, who had come perilously close to ending his life, Musi nevertheless remained unwilling to concede. Subsequently, an event transpired that no seer could have anticipated. The massive timber that Xuehao had been wielding soared directly into Musi's cranium, sending him reeling back into the Valley of Dreams. At that moment, Hector was prepared to concede that his sibling Fang had been correct regarding his fortune. Yet the conflict remained unresolved. The chiefs continued to contend for their clans. Time and again, they repelled one another. The contest extended for such a prolonged period that both individuals' limbs started to lose sensation. Chen realized he couldn't withstand another strike, although his adversary was equally compromised. Observing the mountain clan chief hesitate, the sorceress's attendant delivered crimson foliage to him. At her command, he was to utilize the plant, despite his aversion to achieving victory in such a manner. If he incinerated them, the leader could return home unscathed, while the attendant would seek refuge from the smoke and the water, and keep watch. The sorceress had cautioned about the repercussions, prompting the attendant to encourage him to make a prudent choice and evade failure. Chen instantly comprehended. He intended to relinquish inhibition, fortify his physique with red ginseng, and employ Pangu's ability to confront the mountain tribe on equal footing. Red ginseng could have provided a significant edge over the newcomers, but the leader of the mountain tribe remained reluctant to utilize it. The sorceress had likely assessed his nature accurately, which is why she instructed her attendant to bear the herb for any emergency. Nevertheless, no one hurried to ignite it. Chen couldn't allow that opportunity to pass by. He struck with his axe with maximum power, unleashing a shockwave potent enough to uproot multiple trees behind the commander. The attendant endured, solely due to his fleeting awareness of the blow and his swift escape. As soon as he sensed Chen's gaze upon him, he realized he could no longer waver. If the chief didn't kindle the ginseng personally, then he would. Seizing a torch, he collected the foliage he had scattered in panic and directed them toward the flames, already envisioning how the confrontation would conclude. However, the commander halted him. With a single stroke, he severed the branch and extinguished the fire, fully cognizant that this could provoke the sorceress. When the attendant requested a clarification, the leader expressed his disbelief in him. The sorceress probably had issued no such command. Thus, he instructed the attendant to return and convey his own message. Gripping the foliage in wrath, the attendant could scarcely fathom this affront. The journey back to the sorceress was not extensive, he cautioned. Thus, the leader should anticipate retribution. Chen observed the whole interaction in quietude, even as his devastating strength continued to escalate despite the prolonged battle. In reality, he could scarcely remain upright. Following his confrontation with the ichthyosaur, he hadn't a moment to recuperate before hastening to the frontier. Now, even his Pangu strength was close to depletion. His sight blurred. Chen realized he couldn't sustain this for much longer. He would be fortunate to achieve even a single additional strike. Following that, he would undoubtedly lose consciousness. The troops were not in any superior state either. Their power had long ago been depleted, and they were unable to adequately assist their monarch any longer. All Chen could rely on was his own might and hope that the next strike would connect. Otherwise, the chieftain of the mountain tribe could effortlessly annihilate the entire village. However, that was not Chen's sole apprehension. Had the leader incinerated the ginseng, triumph would have been guaranteed. Yet instead, he quarreled with his attendant and discarded the foliage. It appeared ludicrous, nearly illogical, and no matter how Chen contemplated it, he discovered no solution. It was wiser to employ his fists than squander energy in thought. As long as any power persisted, he needed to grasp the opportunity and conclude the leader swiftly. Time and time again he charged, attempting to incapacitate the individual, Yet the chief continually fought back and mirrored his movements. The leader appeared elated to confront a fighter as powerful as Chen, and encouraged him to disclose all that he had remaining. It was only after both were exhausted that he ultimately perceived Chen's injured arm. Certainly, he had not inflicted those wounds. The chief surmised that Chen had conducted some ceremonial offering to acquire his power. That rendered the confrontation even more captivating. Yet everyone was aware it couldn't endure for much longer. The commander was on the brink of fatigue as well. The supernatural strength bestowed by the sorceress was dwindling rapidly. Unable to evade the impending blow, he decided to act preemptively and launch an assault. He desired the outcome to be resolved justly, and vowed that if Chen were to be defeated, he would protect the diminutive community. It was a sincere and honorable proposal, and Chen valued it, but he had no requirement for compassion. With a frenzied howl, two entirely contrasting powers collided, united by their arms, provoking an eruption so intense it created a cavity at their location. At that moment, nobody could predict how the conflict would conclude, so they merely bided their time for the chaos to subside, and for some unforeseen blessing to manifest. It was only at that moment that the fighters observed the depression in the stone, where the wounded leader of the mountain clan had plummeted. No one possessed the energy to articulate, yet they all comprehended the identical notion. The newly arrived clan had regained its territory. At that precise instant, the restraints encircling Chen's arm shattered, and a surge of excruciating agony surged through him. Had it occurred even slightly earlier, he probably wouldn't have triumphed over his rival. The Pangu energy had significantly aided him in the battle, yet harnessing it resulted in repercussions unlike any he had encountered previously. Ultimately, his limbs collapsed, and he slumped against IU, who would not permit her sovereign to succumb after triumphing. Simultaneously, they perceived the queen pleading for assistance in the event that the witch's minion returned. Chen's vigor was waning, and he was no longer able to command the troops. Thus, he transferred all authority to Lisa. Just before losing consciousness, he recalled Alana, who had collapsed in the water, and instructed IU to rescue her at any cost. Throughout the duration of Chen's unconsciousness, the individuals designated to attend to him provided diligent care. During his absence, Lisa effectively oversaw the tribe and only returned to the communal dwelling at night to visit him. However, when Chen awoke today, he discovered her partly unclothed. Thus, he feigned that he remained in slumber. He was reluctant to humiliate her by gazing, but when she perched on his bed, he almost succumbed to his impulses. She delicately glided her fingers across his skin for an extended period, scrutinizing his every response. And when she reached her limit, she serenely informed him that she was aware he was conscious. Lisa had no desire to rouse him fully. She wished to play with him a bit, which only heightened Chen's agitation. He promptly widened his gaze and attempted to shift the topic, feigning concern solely for the community. Regrettably, even mentioning Alana did not deter Lisa as she inched nearer and nearer to his face. As she expressed it, this was scarcely the time for inquiries of that nature. Playfully provoking him, she speculated that he could hardly shift, and warned her intent to discover precisely what he could manage under such circumstances. Truthfully, Chen had envisioned a scenario like this for an extended period, albeit not in this manner. He had envisioned himself dedicating his all and demonstrating his endurance to all. Yet Lisa's obstinacy shattered that dream entirely. Ultimately, he conceded that she would assume command, fragmenting his perception of himself as an indomitable monarch. Subsequently, the system unleashed a harsh revelation, a mission titled 7 Times in a Night, founded on the concept that a leader ought to be the most formidable in all aspects. Even more troubling, one of those 7 segments needed to endure for no less than an hour, with 5 morsels presented as the incentive. The reward appeared alluring, yet the consequence extinguished all excitement. Should he falter, the main character would be compelled to alter his perspective. Once more, Chen found it hard to envision completing the mission. He had yet to recuperate from his battle with the mountain chief, and his arm was in shambles, making demise seem far more probable than triumph. The circumstances were so ludicrous that they resembled a climactic showdown where the protagonist opts for self-destruction prior to the decisive blow. Upon reflection, he understood that the system had presented him with an option. Thus he opted to disregard the mission and bide his time for it to dissipate. What he did not anticipate was that quietness was regarded as agreement. Yelling in fury and attempting to push Lisa aside, Chen berated the system and all of its foolish tasks. This could have turned into the most dreadful day of his existence, as he wasn't permitted to. Repose. All he could do was wish for someone to intervene, or that Lisa would take sympathy on him and resume her responsibilities. And then, as though destiny intervened, Zunda crashed in, shattering half the residents, separated and seizing Chen. He had never felt such gratitude for an abduction, despite the fact that the system still hadn't annulled the mission. Nonetheless, when the main character instructed the bear to halt, it behaved as though it hadn't perceived him whatsoever. Zunda transported Chen further into the woods, and he began to contemplate the likelihood of becoming a meal. Had he anticipated the outcome, he might have opted to remain with Lisa. Reconciling with his destiny, he bore the agony of Zunda's fangs until she released him at the entrance of a cavern. He was oblivious to the reasons behind his presence in the woods, or what they sought from him, prompting him to survey his surroundings attentively. Subsequently, following the bear's guttural cry, 2 young bears emerged from the den and joyfully welcomed their mother. Up until that point, Chen had never conceived that Zunda was a female, so he was taken aback to discover that she was also nurturing young ones. Simultaneously, the system issued a fresh mission. Under their mother's guidance, the 2 young ones were prepared to integrate into his community, and he needed to determine whether to welcome them. He didn't waver for a moment and welcomed them, providing the community with reliable future security. In a few years, the young ones would mature into formidable champions for the clan. Upon validating the request, he examined the population tally. It had increased by 20, and the military force now totaled 68 out of 98 individuals, while the other 30 were attributed to 3 man-eating bears. Upon surpassing a total of 90, the system presented a new primary quest. Chen was required to enlarge his domain to 10 square kilometers and enlist over 300 individuals within a span of 6 months. It had been quite some time since the previous main quest, and he might have overlooked it if not for the prompt. The prize brought him true joy, yet that was of little significance when the assignment was so challenging. Nevertheless, there was no turning back. It was time to accelerate the combat training and instruct the remainder of the clan on agricultural practices. With 3 predatory bears at his disposal, Chen could feel somewhat more at ease. The community now boasted robust defense. Accompanying Shunda, he observed the young bears for a time, and out of tedium, opted to assign them names. This delighted the mother bear, who lifted her ears attentively to hear Chen's suggestions. Many of the titles he contemplated were not fitting for the impending creatures that would eventually tear foes to shreds. Thus, he opted for the most favorable alternatives available to him. He designated the tawny cub as Shun, and the crimson one as Shun-san. They were oblivious to the language, naturally, but perceiving their mother's endorsement, they curled up next to her. Regardless, the tranquil days were nearly at an end, and shortly he would be overwhelmed with tasks once more. Examining the system diagram, Chen was delighted to discover information concerning neighboring clans, and began strategizing an incursion. The diagram proved to be exceptionally beneficial. He had not even approached the western encampment, yet he was already aware of the landscape and lookout stations, and snares. In the ensuing 48 hours, Chen intended to instruct a few novices in fundamental agricultural techniques, subsequently embarking on a reconnaissance mission with a focused mindset. However, for the time being, he simply craved sustenance. Following the confrontation with the mountain leader, he had yet to sample the ichthyosaur flesh, and was hopeful they had reserved some for him. To his astonishment, no one had laid a finger on the creature without the chief's consent. The entire community was aware that Chen was their finest chef, and had been patient for him to heal. 3 days elapsed in this manner. His period of respite was drawing to a close, and the main character ultimately needed to prepare for a journey to the adjacent tribe. For the expedition, he brought a bear along, increasingly utilizing it as a steed. Finally, Ayu and Lisa emerged to bid him farewell and extend their best wishes for the reconnaissance journey. He entrusted the cubs to Huang Shi, who was already tending to the hyena infants. He additionally instructed Lisa to monitor the fighters to prevent them from harming one another with the new catapult. Moreover, he entrusted Alana to Ayu's oversight. Regrettably, she remained unable to completely recall recent occurrences and required vigilant attention. Everything was of such significance to him that Lisa grew weary of hearing it and quickly pushed him out of the residence. Consequently, he continued to be anxious about Ayu. She had sown the millet precisely as directed, ensuring the fields were in good condition, yet she still appeared despondent. The reality was that she was opposed to him embarking on the expedition and implored him to allow her to accompany the imprudent mountain clan instead. After listening to her concerns, Lisa advised her that regardless of the adversary encountered, a bear would accompany Chun, so fretting would only exacerbate the situation. Owing to Lisa's resoluteness, the main character was able to depart without further commotion, entrusting the queen with authority. However, from that point forward, Lisa grew increasingly wary in Ayu's presence. The girl devoted an excessive amount of focus to Chen. She started observing Ayu's unabashed conduct around the clock. However, Lisa was not straightforward either. As soon as she completed her farewell, she called upon her loyal informants and instructed them to track Chen. Previously, the bear had nearly taken her spouse away, so she now resolved to uncover the reality and ensure he was genuinely venturing out to explore. In any case, it would be preferable if she never uncovered the concealed hut in the woodland. In the meantime, Chen abruptly began to sneeze uncontrollably. As frigid air struck his bare flesh, he was unable to determine the source of the chill, and attributed it to his injury not being completely mended. He continued on his way until he arrived at a towering peak he needed to navigate around, thereby wasting additional time. As the bear sought a path upward, Chen examined the landscape. Had he been given the opportunity to establish himself on a peak, he would have replicated the actions of the mountain clan, utilizing elevation as an ideal safeguard. Numerous pathways led to the summit, ample to direct the primary contingent directly forward, while another faction launched an assault from the rear. However, as he was in the midst of strategizing the attack, Border Patrol agents noticed the massive bear and approached to challenge him. Attempting to soothe them, Chen presented himself and commanded them to escort him to their chief. Previously, they had been the ones to bring conflict. Now it was the champion's moment. But they declined. They allowed him to depart, asserting that the leader was too occupied to meet with anyone. Otherwise, they cautioned, they would launch an assault. Until now, Chen had remained courteous, yet these brutes evidently possessed no decorum whatsoever. Grasping, with his axe in hand, he contemplated whether to make the first move. Subsequently, the captives situated behind them attracted his attention. He distinctly recalled hearing that prisoners don shackles, yet these appeared dissimilar. Amidst the unfamiliar faces, Chen identified the previous leader of the mountain tribe and Muzi, neither of them bearing any burdens. The location perplexed him, prompting him to send June over. The sentinels separated to let him through. Chen found it hard to fathom what could diminish a leader to this extent, but their clarification disclosed the tribe's regulations. They possessed a sorceress who deprived failures of their celestial strength, instantly converting them into subservience. Thus, the former chief was no longer a ruler. A more formidable individual had assumed his position. And that was the individual Chen now had to confront. As if invoked by divine beings, the new chief emerged upon the mountain after Chen absorbed the tale, gazing down at him with sheer haughtiness. He wouldn't even descend to protect the clan personally, dispatching troops to confront the intruder instead. The clan was ferocious and disorderly. However, it was unexpectedly evident that they had mastered the use of harpoons. They ascended the sheer precipice effortlessly, their souls accustomed to rugged terrain, which provided them a distinct advantage in combat.